Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Tuesday. It is November 24th. I'm Jason Longshore, John Nelson alongside. We got MLS Cup playoffs. We got Copa Libertadores. We got Champions League. We got rumors. We got news. We got all kinds of things to dig into today. 3 games in the MLS Cup playoffs. Starts at 6 o'clock with Nashville headed to Connecticut to face Toronto. 8 o'clock, Philadelphia hosts New England. 10:30 Eastern Time, Seattle hosts LAFC. Some subplots in all of those. We'll take your questions on that. We'll get into Champions League. That is back today. You've got some interesting matchups today. You've got some news about the week of Champions League as well. Some difficult situations for a few clubs that they're going to have to find a way through as injuries, as fatigue all starts to mount up for the teams that are playing in Europe. I'm really starting to wonder if this is going to lead to a surprise winner of one of the major leagues in Europe because they're not playing in the midweek. It really could help them at some point if this continues because you're seeing teams with injury sheets of 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12. I mean, it's absurd at this stage. You got Copa Libertadores in South America. You're starting to see some of those same situations there with teams missing a number of players. You're also seeing teams around the world dealing with COVID. LAFC missing 4 players tonight in a playoff match due to COVID-19. Atletico Paranaense is missing 6 in their Copa Libertadores match today. You've got teams in Europe missing 1, 2, 3 all over the map. It's very, very tricky for managers at the moment. And before we get into all of those games, we had a bunch of questions last night. We talked about it for a long time on Soccer Over There. But the rumors that are out there about Gabriel Heinze coming to Atlanta, there's not been any development since an article was posted at Doble Amaria yesterday morning at 7:15. Normally, we would have talked about such a thing if it had actually started to make the rounds by the time we had our show. It hadn't. It wasn't until a little bit later that it started to get picked up. Doble Amaria is more of an aggregator out of Argentina than a newsbreaker. They have broken news before, so, I mean, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility here. But they're not necessarily known for that. And TIC hasn't run with it yet. TNT out of Argentina hasn't run with it yet. We haven't seen any of the leading journalists out of Argentina run with it yet. Kind of been waiting to see if that would happen. A journalist out of Brazil who has tens of thousands of followers on Twitter commented on it. It's a little unclear as to whether he was breaking anything additional or it was all separate reporting or if it was just kind of repeating what Doble Amaria put out there. One element to it that I think is really important to make sure people understand. First off, just the idea that he's the only good candidate and he should be hired no matter what. You're talking about a manager with limited experience. You're talking about a former player who has achieved everything in the game you can achieve. I mean, he's played at all the big clubs. Incredibly well-known, Argentine legend defender. I mean, you've got such a CV as a player. As a manager, he's still young. He's got 1 year in the second division where he won the second division title, 2.5 years with Vélez. He came in mid-season in his first year. He has done well. He has attracted a lot of followers. He has really won a lot of people over with the way his teams play. He's got a 6th place and a 3rd place in the Argentine first division with Vélez. However, to keep this in mind to understand what the big picture is right now, it's not a slam dunk that he leaves Argentina. Now, when his contract was up at Vélez, he said he was leaving a few days before the end of the last season, and that was right before the COVID outbreak. He's been linked to Marseille, didn't get that job in the summertime. Villas-Boas got that instead. He's been linked to Palmeiras, and it sounds like maybe Heinze turned that one down, which might not be a bad thing. Brazilian football is kind of a mess. So when he left, he didn't have a job in place. The expectation was that he would go to Europe. Obviously, everything's a little different now than it was at the beginning of March. But another club that could come into play here, and he has been linked to, is in Argentina, and it's Racing. Racing is in an absolute state of crisis at the moment. They host Flamengo tonight in the Copa Libertadores. They've lost 4 games in a row. Sebastian Becasese is the manager there. He came from Independiente, and before that, he had a second-place finish with Defensa y Justicia. Becasese is even younger than Heinze. Not a playing career to speak of. Was Jorge Sampaoli's assistant for a long time. A lot of experience with Becasese as an assistant. Then he's been a manager, had success, had a bad stint at Independiente, started okay at Racing, now there's pressure. He's lost 4 in a row. He was brought in by Diego Milito. Diego Milito was, well, still is for now, the technical director at Racing. He announced he'll be leaving the club in December. He blamed the president, a falling out with the president, Victor Blanco. Victor Blanco is up for election in December. Blanco has been pretty highly regarded as one of the best presidents that Racing has ever had. But Diego Milito's a legend. And now people are starting to question, well, do we want to elect Blanco again to be the president of our club? It's a membership club. It's kind of like the Barcelona situation. Fans went to Milito's house after he issued his statement begging him to stay. He said no, he's not staying. Now the speculation on Becasese revolves on 2 sides. One, will he get fired if they don't get past Flamengo in the Copa Libertadores? It's a possibility. He's lost 4 in a row. If he doesn't get past them and it's over 2 legs, he could be in trouble on that side. There's also speculation that he will leave at the end of the Libertadores run because it was Milito who brought him in. And he feels like he has no protection now. The people who brought him to the club are no longer going to be there. So that's a sidebar, but it's an important sidebar because that is another place that Gabriel Heinze has been linked to. And you have to keep that, I think, in mind here with the conversation about what's going to happen with Atlanta United's managerial hire and if Heinze is a candidate, if he is being talked to, where things stand, he might have a competitor at Racing that has emerged. It could happen any time. See how they do tonight. Again, it's over 2 legs, and Flamengo is not exactly in the greatest position either. Remember, they fired Dome Tarrant. They just got knocked out of the Copa do Brasil that he got them to the quarterfinals, and they got eliminated 5-1. So Rogerio Ceni, it hasn't really started well for him. Racing might get through this, and it might extend this bit of chaos, but that's the big picture. That's the big picture on where things stand right now. There have not been any updates on Gabriel Heinze to Atlanta today in Argentine media. Most of the focus is on Libertadores games today. You've got big games all over the place, but Racing is getting a lot of the attention at the moment because of what could come there. You could see a complete shakeup at the club, and they might really go after Gabriel Heinze as their manager.
And just as a bit of an update before the show this morning, TIC on their website has a headline, Atlanta United and MLS could be Heinze's next destination, but there isn't any additional sourcing of information from anything that is out there. It just basically says, end of paragraph 1, now another team took an interest in him and his next assignment could be in MLS. The U.S. team has not hired a coach since departure of Frank de Boer in July, and this is through Translator. For 4 months, the current Netherlands coach place has been occupied by interim coach Stephen Glass, Fernando Meza, Franco Escobar, Eric Crometti, Marcelino Moreno, and Ezequiel Barco are the Argentines who make up the team of the American team. In addition, Gerardo Martino was already in the position of DT in said team with which he won the league title in 2018. So it's just a headline without any additional information and laying a bit of the groundwork. But TIC came out with that just before the show this morning.
Oh, well, I wish you'd put that on the show notes there. Thanks.
Well, no, literally it just popped up.
Okay. It sounds like it's a rehash because every article has had that list of players. They have Argentine players, Argentine manager, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see. So nothing new, nothing from the reporters. Is there a name attached to that?
No, it's just an article in a byline.
Okay, so it's not reporting by one of their people. All right.
No.
Well, we'll see. But keep the big picture in mind. He's not only looking at Atlanta United potentially. I think Racing is something to keep in mind. Mentioned it last night as well. And another area where people are talking about Gabriel Heinze is he could be bringing Fernando Gago into his coaching staff. His longtime assistant is leaving to go try to be a manager himself, so he's got an opening. Gago's just retired from Vélez, a ton of injuries, an incredible player, but injuries just derailed his career. Played with Heinze at Real Madrid, at Roma, with the Argentine national team, played for him at Vélez, and now he is looking to go into coaching. They met Sunday night. They had a meeting, asado, barbecue, hanging out, chatting. It sounds like from Gago's caption on Instagram that they might be working together in some capacity. That was what a lot of people are implying from it. So that sounds like Heinze is getting ready to do something. Is Atlanta that something? It could be. Is Racing potentially that something? It could be. Is there something else out there? Possibly. I mean, this could get all kinds of crazy. So there you go. That's what we know at this point, and I'm glad Te'ise decided to at least rehash what's out there, because that's the biggest outlet that has had it. Byrne says Gago could probably still play in MLS. I don't think Gago can really run at this point, Byrne. His knee has had so many issues. That's why he's given it up. He was playing at Vélez and doing pretty well when he came back from his last injury, and it's just, he can't go anymore. It's a shame. Questions about Heinze, if you guys have them, go ahead and throw them in here on the Twitch pitch. Throw them in on Twitter. We'll get to them. Sam Williamson asked, did he play for Bielsa at Old Boys? He played for Tata at Newell's Old Boys. I don't think Heinze went back as far as Bielsa. He played for Bielsa with Argentina, and I want to make sure I've got it right. Let's see. So he played on the 2004 Olympic team that Bielsa coached. So he won a gold medal with Bielsa. He, I believe, missed Bielsa. Probably Bielsa knew him in the academy at Newell's because he debuted a few years later. But I think he missed him there. Played for him at Argentina's Olympic team in 2004. If you don't know Heinze, he went from Newell's breaking through to Valladolid in Spain, played a little bit with Sporting on loan, moved to PSG where he had a great run, moved to Manchester United where he had a run from 2004 to 2007, then Real Madrid for a couple of seasons, then Marseille for a couple of seasons, a year in Rome, 2011 and 2012, and then back to finish his career at Newell's Old Boys, and that's where he played for Tata Martino. Bielsa invited Heinze, when he retired, to join him at Marseille, and Heinze had played at Marseille. He had just retired. He wasn't sure what he was going to do. He turned it down, and then later got into coaching.
A couple of early thoughts from folks about Heinze this morning. Nathan Pugh is in, and he says, this potential hire doesn't get me excited, but it doesn't bore me. I'm not in tune with South American club footy and pay it zero attention, and y'all I will trust on if this guy is good.
Honestly, this is where I'm kind of throwing my hands up, and not at Nathan and just in general, because there are some who are saying he has to be hired. There's no question about it. He has to be hired. Why? He just does. Well, what does he do? I don't know. That's the thing, is there's a lot of people who don't follow the Argentine Super League. I follow it fairly closely, but I didn't study Vélez. So I can't sit here and break down everything about his game for you right now and what he wants to do. There's a lot of people who are very fond of the way that his teams play. There are a lot of Bielsa traits in his teams. I think there's a lot of Almeida in his teams. There's a lot of patient possession in his teams as well. And I guess that's a scary thing to say, but his teams did not score a ton of goals. And I think some people are maybe, I don't know if they're trying to push that, or they're maybe a little confused and think that because his teams play exciting according to others, that means he's going to score a ton of goals. His third-place team in the first division last year scored in 23 matches 27 goals. The sixth-place team the season before scored 34 in 25 matches. His probably most prolific team was his second division winners at Argentinos Juniors in 2016-17, 44 games, 61 goals. His teams are very good defensively. One reason they're very good defensively is not because they sit and defend, because there's plenty of ways to defend. It's because they are high pressure. They disrupt you. Not Red Bull's high pressure in that they don't want the ball. You can look at pressure two ways, really. Are you using pressure to create, or are you using pressure to get the ball back? Jurgen Klopp is a prime example of somebody who has evolved in this. At Dortmund, he said, press, the gegenpressing, the counter-pressing, the pressing. We can start to draw lines between the two. We might be here for 5 days. He said that was his playmaker, was pressing. So it was the system that created the opportunities. Now he's got outside backs when they're healthy that create opportunities. He is going towards what Pep Guardiola has always done. Pep Guardiola wanted to win the ball back quickly via pressure to have the ball. He wanted to press to play, whereas others play through pressing. Heinze is more towards the press to play. He wants to get the ball back, and then he wants to have the ball. He wants to work the ball around. He looks for the big switch. He wants to create overloads on the outside. He wants to put crosses in, but not just putting crosses in for somebody to go up and try to head. He's looking for those balls that Joseph Martinez has had a lot of success with. Those cutbacks, those low crosses. His teams look for those a lot. So that's a really good sign. I haven't studied Vélez closely enough to tell you that they don't score goals because he doesn't want to score goals, which no manager's like that. Is it down to personnel? Is it they're creating a ton of opportunities, but they're not finishing? These are things that need to be looked at. But people are jumping to conclusions without information, and I'm seeing a lot of incorrect information, too, about this. Please put in the time to look at this. I've seen people say that he's got to be hired. This is the guy, and if you don't hire him, it's a bad thing. Well, do you really know that? He might be the perfect hire for this team. He's young. He can relate to the players. He's not too far past them. He's a legendary player himself, so he should command respect. He has been, I think, taskmaster might be unfair, but yeah, he can be harsh. He can be demanding, and that's not a bad thing. This could be the jump for him to come here, win trophies, and then make his move to Europe. Because that's what he's going to want to do. I think if you think that he's coming here to be here for 10 years, that's not going to happen. He's 42. He's a young guy. He has ambition. I mean, look at that playing CV. You think he wants to manage at these kind of clubs? Yes. We're talking PSG, Manchester United, Real Madrid, Marseille, Roma. I mean, it's as big as it gets. So he's going to be in the mix for those jobs eventually if he continues to progress. Is this the catapult? That's going to be one of the decisions on his end. But this idea that he is a finished product isn't fair to him. He's still evolving. Managers evolve. Managers learn from successes and from failures. Managers will add to their game. Look at Jurgen Klopp. You know, we have a lot of fun with Jurgen Klopp being defensive these days in terms of how he approaches the media. But Jurgen Klopp came into Liverpool, gegenpress. That was it. That was what he was known for. That was what he did. And then you realize that, well, wait a minute, if teams are just going to sit back against us, we can't just do that because there's no opportunity to. So now what can we do to win games where we're favored? Okay, let's get some players who can play, first off. Let's give them the opportunities to play, and let's adjust. And his evolution has been one of the most impressive in modern times. because today he is not just what he was before. Gabriel Heinz is 2.5 years in at a first division club. We'll leave Godoy Cruz out of it. He managed 10 games there. He was still getting his certifications. 1 year in the second division, 2.5 in the first. He's still a developing manager. Everything is there for him to be successful, but he's still learning. And there's lots of things to go into this. Just because he's Argentine, just because he's South American, doesn't mean that's good or bad. It means that's where he's from. I don't know if it's just because this is the first rumor that's popped off. And again, it's not from the most reputable of sources. And it hasn't really been followed up on yet. It doesn't mean it's not real. It just means that let's see what happens. But slow down a little bit in that this fixes everything and this is perfect, and learn a little bit about him. There's actually a good number of articles out there about him in English that look at the way his teams play. And different people look at his teams different ways, to be perfectly honest. Some say he doesn't counter-press. Others say he does. Okay? Some define counter-pressing differently than pressing. Some put them in the same bucket. Some say they're two separate incidents. It depends on who you're talking to. Read, learn for yourself, and make decisions for yourself. If you don't like, if you're open-minded, if you've made a decision. That needs to happen more here. It does. And what I'm trying to lay out for you guys when we talk about this kind of stuff, you know how I feel, and I try to separate how I feel and what I like in the game and what I don't like in the game from what can be successful and what isn't. I like teams that play creatively. I like teams that have playmakers. I like teams that kind of blow your mind with the way they attack. I'm not a fan of teams that just press. I'm not a fan of defensive teams. That's my personal feelings about it. Can defensive teams win games? Absolutely. Can pressing teams be really effective? Absolutely. So what I'm trying to do is give you guys information so you can decide how you feel about it in the game. Because that's how soccer grows in this country and in this area, is an informed fan base that makes decisions for themselves and isn't badgered into a direction or lectured into a direction or whatever. I'll go back and forth with you based on how I feel about something, but I want you to have all the information and the correct information rather than just, this is it, do it now, put the flag up, here we go, let's march. No, slow down. Think about it. Decide what you want to do. Decide what you think. What else we got on Twitter?
Well, and just before we get back in there real quick, you mentioned Jurgen Klopp and the evolution of a managerial style. Remember when Klopp went to Liverpool, he came in, they finished the 15-16 season in 8th place. And then you continue to evolve and adjust. You finished 4th in 17-18, and then you see what Liverpool is now. It wasn't just the instant success, and Klopp adjusted over time when it came to what we're seeing right now with Liverpool. Just as part and parcel to this whole story.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But he came from success at Dortmund. So let's also not mix these two up here.
Right.
Jurgen Klopp did not come from 2.5 years in the first division.
Right.
He had won titles and won trophies and been to a Champions League final. So he still had to evolve at Liverpool because he was in a different situation. Dortmund wasn't the number one team in Germany, never was going to be. They were more favored than some other teams, but the German style is different. He had to go to England, adapt to the style. He had to adapt to becoming a favorite, and he'd adapt to having players who could play and not asking players who could play just to run themselves into the ground. Let them play. And he's adapted and done an amazing, amazing job. The other thing I would say about that is I don't think this hire in Atlanta is somebody who is going to get 3, 4, 5 years to develop.
Right.
The expectation is not where it was for Liverpool when they hired Jurgen Klopp. That was to get back to the top. This is to stay at the top. And yes, 1 year doesn't knock you off of being at the top. Atlanta United is expected to be a favorite next year. So you need somebody who can come in and do the job quickly. Does that mean they're going to be the best they can possibly be on opening day? No. But does that mean they're going to be expected to compete for trophies next year? Yes. And I don't think Jurgen Klopp was in year one at Liverpool. I think here you will be. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, just Ropes is excited that there are actually finally managerial rumors.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
And also on the board this morning, Joshua Jones. Heinze has been without a club for several months. Why is Atlanta United just now opening conversations with Heinze? It doesn't make sense. Presumably he wasn't the club's first target, or other candidates have passed.
That's total speculation, because you got to remember, this is not just your normal calendar year. He left Vélez. His last game there was March 9th, the last game of the Superliga season for 2019-2020. He announced he was leaving on March 6th, the Friday before. March 11th is when Atlanta played in Mexico City, and March 12th is when the MLS season was shut down. And that next weekend were the last games in Argentina until very recently. So he said he was stepping down, looking with an eye towards Europe is what the speculation was. Then everything shut down. And then everything has been different since. Now, Atlanta didn't have an opening until July. I don't think they were looking to hire somebody that day. I don't think they were looking to hire somebody immediately. Heinze had been linked to Marseille. He's been linked to Palmeiras. I believe there were other links, and I don't know how true they were. His name's come up a lot. So I don't think it's fair to say that he wasn't the first choice or he wasn't looked at or whatever. 2020's thrown everything for a loop. I think you have to keep that in mind when you look at this. I don't think Gabriel Heinze, when he stepped down on March 6th, expected to not be working right now. But I don't think he expected football to shut down for months either. So everything's a little different. Everybody's adjusting. And that could mean that instead of him getting the opportunity in Europe that he thought was coming, he might take a different path. And that could be to MLS. It could be to Atlanta. And again, the usual things are being said about Atlanta United in the people who are talking about this. You know, you see people say something like, oh, well, why would he go to MLS? He's such a great up-and-coming manager. He should go here. He should go there. And people are like, look, this isn't a typical MLS team. This is a club with ambition. This is a club that's investing. This is a club that is doing big things, and they are a big club. This is not your typical conversation. So the respect is there for Atlanta United, and that's why this could be that move. Could it be a catapult? Could it be a launching pad for him? It absolutely could, and he could see it that way. If you go back into the Argentine league after what you did, is that looked at as a step back? Again, it's a different year. Everything went crazy. So that would be unfair in my book. But could he look that way? If Racing comes to his door with a lot of money and a lot of promises, could he say, you know what? I don't want to do that. Even though Racing's a bigger club than Vélez, could he say, you know what? I've been there and done that. It's time for me to go elsewhere, and that could be to Atlanta. Or it could be waiting to see what happens in Europe and taking a job in Europe. That's possible too. The meeting with Gago makes you think, and you're connecting dots with Gago's statement, that things are moving forward. Things are being planned for something coming. Could just mean that he's like Pochettino when Pochettino said on Sky Sports, like, hey, I'm ready to get back into it. I'm available. Is that where Heinze is right now? Could be, and we'll see. But it's exciting. You got rumors. I don't think it means anything about first choice, second choice, third choice, because you haven't heard about any rumors. So I feel like that's total speculation and a little unfair.
And that is it for Heinze on the Twitters for the moment. We do have another topic as well.
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. We got some stuff on the Twitch pitch, and we'll try to go quickly because, again, this is a rumor, and there hasn't been any substantial follow-up just yet. And you do have the Racing situation that I think will impact how this all plays out. DKB Ransom says, could you give us a little analysis on his coaching style? Pretty new to him. Very quickly, I'm not going to go super detailed here. If the time comes, we'll do that later on down the road. He subscribes to the Marcelo Bielsa theories of the game. He'll push back on that because he has the utmost respect for Bielsa, but there's a lot of elements of Bielsa. He wants the ball. He wants to get the ball quickly. If he loses it with his teams, he wants it back as fast as possible. He will be patient in possession to open teams up. And what I've seen is somebody who is constantly looking to create overloads on the flanks. There's a lot of play to create opportunities wide. He's demanding. He wants a lot from his players. He's done very well at developing young players. Very, very well. Thiago Almada at Vélez is a 19-year-old who could be sold for around $20 million. Heinze's done a great job bringing him along. That's another key here, and that's a huge check on something Atlanta United would be looking for, elevating young players. You look at the young players in this team, you want somebody in here who can make them even better. At Argentinos, people loved it. That was his first real job. People loved the way he played. A lot of width, a lot of times three in the back, although not always. A lot of that hunting for the ball after you lose it. You can call it press, you can call it counter press, wherever you want to go with it. Multiple people trying to win the ball back. So there is a system to get the ball back as quickly as possible. He'll adjust based off the opposition. He'll play a 3-4-3 one game. He'll play a 4-3-3 the next. He'll go with a little bit of 4-4-2 diamond at times. Formation doesn't really matter. It's about having players who can rotate. It's about players who can do multiple things. He loves for his center backs to be able to carry the ball forward. He loves for his outside backs at times to come inside. He loves for his wingers to be able to do both, to be able to stay wide and stretch the field, but also to be able to come inside and give that space to the outside backs when they go forward. He wants players who can do a variety of things. He doesn't want single-dimensional players. He wants guys who can do a lot of different stuff. Much more, I think he's evolved to wanting more of the ball, and it's a little more of the Almeida school, where Almeida's teams are, you talk about the press, you talk about the man-to-man, but you look at the possession numbers for them. I mean, they have 60% of the ball. They do want to defend in the other half. They want to play in the other half. They don't want it in their own half. What that can lead to at times is when things do break down a little bit, because, again, he's asking for a lot of 1v1 situations. He's asking his players to win the 1v1s. If you don't, you're going to see the breakaways that happened against Tata Martino's teams. You're going to see the breakaways that happened early on against Frank de Boer's teams. Both tried to fight against that. Heinze will probably try to fight against that as well, but the way he wants to play is going to be committing numbers into the other half. And when play breaks down, you're going to have things go the other way. You want to limit that, and his teams have done a good job of that overall. Again, last season conceded 14 goals in 23 matches. That got you to third place. The year before, conceded 25 goals in 25 matches. Really good defensive numbers in Argentina. But he's not a defensive manager. That's the thing you have to understand. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of rotation. I think he wants a lot from his players, and he wants a lot of interaction between his players, a lot of overlaps, a lot of change of positions, a lot of swapping. You want a team that is fluid. Fast and fluid, something Atlanta United said a lot. This would fit. It's just this would be the biggest job he's had. And it's not a knock on Vélez. It's just to say, like, this is a club. Vélez was not expected to win trophies every year. Atlanta United is. He hasn't worked at a place as a manager that has been in that situation. He's played in those clubs. I mean, Real Madrid, come on. Manchester United, come on. But as a manager, it's a different conversation. So that's a glimpse, DK, of the way his teams play, and I think what he's looking for out of the way they play.
Okay, I fibbed. Folks are coming in and having more thoughts about Heinze real quick. Tafka says seeing both Tata and FDB get major national team jobs after coaching Atlanta has to be helpful encouragement.
I don't think so, Tata, because I don't think his future's in national team management yet. I think just the fact that they got big jobs, not so much national team, is probably something that is encouraging, because just from what has been said about him and his playing career, I think he ultimately wants to manage in Europe. I think he will if things continue to progress the way they are. I don't think it's national team, not as young as he is. Later on, sure, but I think it's a platform to go to Europe is what he'd be looking for.
And then probably one of the questions of the day so far comes from Bartimus Prime.
What's up, Bart?
If Heinze is a dish on the Thanksgiving table of Atlanta United coaching candidates, which dish is he and why? J-Mac has said mashed potatoes and gravy. It's what you want the most. And no, it'll be good. And then Bart in the back and forth is now saying, well, now I'm dreaming of turkey gravy flowing over fluffy, buttery mashed potatoes.
But this is the only thing I'll say. And again, this is just I'm just asking because I want people to think about it. It's mashed potatoes because you want it, you know it'll be good. Why do you know it will be good? Explain that.
Yeah.
Don't just say because people have said he's good. Don't just say because his teams are exciting. Like, explain it. Why do you want him? It's not hard to find more about him.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like what we do is easy. What I'm saying is we put in the work, and yes, there comes to a point where there is analysis, critical analysis, looking at it and saying, would this work with these players, et cetera, et cetera. But to get an overall sense of what he is, like, learn a little bit more. Don't rely on people just hyping him up or saying he's exciting. Go back. Go watch. I mean, it's easy on YouTube. And it's highlights, yes, and it's, picking and choosing. But go watch Vela's highlights from last season. Get a sense of how they scored their goals. Get a sense of how they conceded their goals. Why do you know it's good? That's the question. Because it's a different hire than Atlanta United has ever done, if he is the guy. They've hired managers with a lot more experience. Even Frank. I mean, Frank had 6 years of experience in the Dutch First Division. Won 4 titles. Yes, Inter. Yes, Crystal Palace. I know everybody reminded us of it every day. They're still doing it to the guy.
Yep.
6 years in the Netherlands, 4 titles. You want to be specific, 5.5 years because he came in mid-season that first year and he won the title. So 5.5 years is more than 2.5 years in the First Division. It's more than 3.5 years total. Playing CVs, you can compare. Tata Martino, tons of experience. Managed in a World Cup. Won titles in Paraguay. Won a title in Argentina. Managed at Barcelona. I mean, you're talking as big as it gets. Gabriel Heinze as a manager has had 3 jobs. Godoy Cruz for 10 games, where he was still getting his certifications and learning. 1 year with Argentinos Juniors, where he won the second division. 2.5 years at Vélez. So it's a different situation. Much younger, much less experienced, much more up and coming. So dig into it a little more.
Now we're caught up on Heinze for now.
Okay. J-Dub says, do you think Heinze would bring the free-flowing attacking style that Atlanta says it wants? Free-flowing, absolutely. Attacking style, look, you guys are going to argue this a million different ways as to what that means. I don't really know. Have his team scored a ton of goals? No. Doesn't mean he's not attacking. That needs to be understood. Free-flowing, 100%. I don't know if people truly know what kind of attacking style they want. I think the things that his teams at Vélez have done, as I'm getting more up to speed, the things that his Vélez teams have done would suit what Atlanta United has had success with. I think the looking for turnovers in the other half, I think the way that they try to use the wide play, there are some real elements that I think would work well. I think Brooks Lennon and George Bello would really fit and do well in a Gabriel Heinze system. I think Marcelino Moreno would thrive in a Gabriel Heinze system. I think Mateo Sosetu and Emerson Heinemann can also thrive in that system. I think it can be a really interesting one. Gaston Jimenez, who is now at Chicago, played for him at Vélez, was more of his number 6. Is he a true 6? But the way that they played, you could play him as a 6. So then you start going down the line of conversations. Does that mean you could play a midfield of Moreno, Josetu, and Heinemann? Potentially. You could. Remedi can fit into that as well. Remedi fits this style really, really well. So I think there's good things about it. Attacking style, I think he attacks in different ways. I think it's free-flowing. I think people will be excited about it. But my question is, are we just measuring the success by the number of goals that are scored? Are we measuring the success in the way that they play? Or are we measuring the success in how much they win? And which one is more important than the other? Win, style, and scoring. Where are they ranked in how you feel about a team? And for different people, it's different ways. I'd be curious to see that evolve here and how that conversation goes. Clayton Paw says, with the little experience, does that benefit us to keep him longer or means he'll be looking to Europe faster? I think the latter, but 2 years is fine. I honestly don't have a problem with that because Atlanta is a team that's trying to win titles every year. They're not trying to rebuild and then have another cycle and then start over and rebuild and have another cycle. They're trying to win titles every year. So you're not looking for a manager to be here for 4 or 5 years in a cycle. You're looking for somebody to come in and win. And the question here is, does his style fit what you have and what you're bringing or what you're wanting to bring to win in 2021? Because that's going to be the goal. I do not think it would be acceptable if it was said that 2021 is going to be a learning year for everybody and in 2022 we're going to win titles. I don't think that's what people want. So then you need to bring in somebody who can win straight away. And if that means they win and they go in 2 years to Europe, that's fine. I would think that's a success. We'll see. Monteflo says, you're missing out if you don't pay attention to South American soccer. I totally agree. Doesn't mean you have to watch it all the time like I do on Fanatis, as I'm trying to learn more and more about it. But in MLS terms, and honestly in worldwide terms, but specifically in this league and in this country, it's important to know the gist. And that's why we talk about it, and that's why we mention these clubs and why we mention these competitions and players who are starting to stand out. Because you're going to see them very possibly come to Major League Soccer or be linked. You're going to see more overlap between CONMEBOL and CONCACAF over time. It would not surprise me if down the road World Cup qualifying is a combined process. It would not surprise me if down the road, and I think further down the road, Copa Libertadores, Copa Sudamericana, CONCACAF Champions League all kind of get melded into one setup. Those things would not shock me at all. So you don't have to know every team and every league and every player like you do about your favorites in Europe. But do understand the lay of the land. I think it's really important when these kind of things pop up. KFC says, I'm absolutely mortified of takes before any manager starts, but I can't handle trashing Heinze. I haven't seen anybody do that. I've seen far more of the opposite of overhyping him.
Yeah.
And we'll see. There's nothing there to trash. A second division title, a 6th place, and a 3rd place with Vélez. Those are good accomplishments. But there's nothing there to overhype and say that it's the perfect situation and there's nothing bad about it. That's setting an unfair expectation that what happens with Frank's team in 2019 is like, oh, well, this isn't what we thought it would be in 3 months. We're angry. That's not fair either. So fair expectations, I think, are the conversation. And fair conversations, to be perfectly honest about it.
Yeah.
Ricky Ricardo says, Franco definitely has admiration for him. Absolutely, coming from Newell's. He's a legend at Newell's. He developed at Newell's. He's a Rosario guy. Absolutely. Franco would immediately have the utmost respect for him. And if you look at the long-term plays here that could come into it, it's been talked about Franco Escobar's future. It's been talked about, and I've said it, and I will say it again. If he continues to develop in the way that he has, it would not surprise me to see him have a captain's armband on his arm. And Gabriel Heinze is somebody who might do that and put that on his arm because of those shared connections and because of potentially that respect. We'll see. Clayton Poss says, just going around and around, says he's very attacking. Again, I don't know if that's the right way to put it. It's not that he's defensive. Again, it gets down to how you define it. His teams are very combative in the attacking half. His teams have not scored a ton of goals, and that's something I'm sure he would want to see more of. His goal scoring's been spread around. I don't think he's had a striker like Joseph Martinez. So is that the missing piece for the way he wants to play? Joseph getting on the end of some of the work that he wants his teams to do, that could unlock everything. You see that happen a lot. A manager has a way of playing, an idea of how to play, doesn't quite have the right players to get it done. One change, boom, it all fits, and it all works. Could Joseph Martinez be that for Gabriel Heinze? Potentially. I think instead of saying he's very attacking, it's maybe more fair to say his teams are very exciting. His teams are very fast. His teams are very fluid, although they will show possession. They will show patience when they have the ball to work to create the best opportunities. But his teams are very active. Let's put it that way. Maybe that's the best word for it. His teams are very active. They're not static. They're active. They're proactive. They're trying to put themselves into control of the match. Goes back to some things that have been said, doesn't it, about controlling games. Not outpossessing teams, not this, not that. Controlling games. That's what he seeks. That's what he's always looking for. Let's see here. Clayton says, seems like a player-friendly coach, and if Franco loves him, that's got to be a good indication the other South American players will love him. Franco loves him because of the shared history with Rosario and with Newell's. It's not to say that others won't, but that's a more specific one. That's a lot more like the idea that everybody loved Tata because he's South American and because of what Miguel Almiron said. Miguel Almiron had a very specific feeling towards Tata because of what he did in Paraguay. There was a special connection there. That would be the same with Franco and with Gabriel Heinze. Player-friendly coach, there could be back and forth on that. When he took the job at Vélez, when they were going into their first training camp, he was very, no cell phones, no PlayStations, no nothing, we got to work. And that was when he first took the team over. Has that changed? I would think that it probably has. Has he loosened up a little bit as he's learned? Yeah, I would think so. But I don't know where there is to say he's a player-friendly coach. I think he's a very driven coach. Sometimes that's not player-friendly. Sometimes that's very hard on the players, and that's okay too. That's not a bad thing. We'll see. Shiva says he's very, very young. Hope he gets the respect being that young. He would, because of his playing CV. He would have the respect from this locker room straight away. And that was maybe the biggest surprise with Frank de Boer is that Frank's playing career and Frank's also, his managerial career at Ajax should have gotten more respect. It sounds like it didn't. Was that from day one, or did that happen over time as the relationship didn't build? We don't know. We weren't there. Here, Heinze will have respect straight away if he is the hire because of his career. Now, he's got to keep that respect, but I think he'll get it day one because of all that. Shiva wants a long-term manager, at least 4 years. I don't see that happening anytime soon. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing. It just means you're going to be doing this. It means that managers are going to come here, whether they are coming off of, situations like Tata at Argentina, where he got to 2 finals and lost in penalties, like Frank with Crystal Palace and with Inter. Heinze's not in that, but he's looking for that next move. You're going to get managers who do that, and you're going to get managers who come in with big expectations. And if they don't meet those expectations, they're not going to be here for 4 years. If they do, they're probably going to move on to another job at some point. And that's okay. That's completely fine, because that's how this club is going to be built. There's nothing wrong with that. Matt Wagner says, which player or players would you think would immediately benefit from what we know of Heinze's style of play? I said it earlier, Moreno, Bello, Lennon, Josetu and Heinemann and Remedi. Like, I think the central midfield is built to play this kind of way. Joseph, obviously, if you're creating the kind of chances that we've talked about, I think Joseph would be able to take advantage of those. Franco, because of the relationship potentially, or at least the shared history, I'm sure there would be a lot of mate and a lot of asados to get to know one another. Meza also. Meza, the way he plays center back would really fit what I've seen from Velas with the wanting the center backs to be able to step forward and play. I think it would help with Miles Robinson's development. That's a lot of the roster, because I think there's a lot of good fit here, for sure. Any other questions on Twitter?
Yep. Tafka has a question about Heinze. He says, how much time passes between earning possession and attempting an actual dangerous pass into the box? Meaning, quote, how hard does he press the gas pedal? FDB felt like 50 horizontal or safe passes per dangerous pass. That was my issue. I know we've argued this before.
Oh, Tafka, my friend. Read Pep Guardiola stuff, man. Like, Pep said, you got to have 15 passes to be organized when you get into the attacking half. Is that too many? Depends. Sometimes you might think it is. Sometimes it moves very quickly. There's not a number. There's not a magic time frame. The attack, you can't do it that way. You can't, for a lot of reasons. Stability, turnovers and not being positioned properly. You can't rush the attack in build-up in the way Tafka's talking about it. You can rush it if you win the ball back in the final third and you can go straight to goal. That's different. Talking about general attacking play. You can do what Pep and what other teams have done, Italian teams, tons of teams, about you lose the ball, you got 5 seconds. You lose the ball, you got 8 seconds. You lose the ball, you got 3 seconds. You can do that defensively. You can put structure to defense. You can't put structure in that way in the attack. You create the best opportunity. Frank was working towards a lot of the things that Pep Guardiola's had success with, in my opinion. He wanted to move the team forward in an organized way, to limit those opportunities that we've talked about that happened to Tata, that happened to Frank, that have happened with Heinze's teams as well, in quick turnovers and being out of position. Now, they've happened for all different reasons, but that's why you move the ball forward in an organized way. And sometimes that takes more passes. Sometimes that takes a slower pace. Sometimes it doesn't. There's not one way. It's not that every time Velas would win the ball, Heinze says, 3, 2, 1, go. Like, it's not that. That's not how you attack. So people will be disappointed to read that Heinze's teams were patient in possession. Why were they patient? They were trying to work for the big switch. They were trying to draw everybody to one side, play to the other. They were trying to draw you at times out of your own half to be able to attack in behind. His teams are more, and maybe this is what Tafka wants to hear. Again, it's not a time frame. It's not a number of passes. His teams are more geared to get into the other half and play, as opposed to stay in your own half and draw the opponent out. So that's one thing that maybe will make you happy. But they will have possession, and they will have a lot of the ball. And when you have a lot of the ball, you're going to have a lot of passes, and that means sometimes the passes will be sideways and backwards, and that's not a bad thing in and of itself. That has to be pushed to the side Passing sideways is not bad. Passing sideways depends on what you're trying to do with it. What's the point? What's the purpose? Why did you pass sideways? Why did you pass back? Is there a reason? If there is, cool. If there's not, then it's a wasted opportunity unless there was nothing else to do, and then you had a reason. You're trying to create something else.
That's it on hindsight for now.
Okay, we'll probably get more. That's how Twitter works, John.
Yes.
People respond to things that we
now.
say. So
I said for now.
I know, but it'll come up again. It's okay. KFC says, I don't know about style, but I'd hope Bello and Franco would benefit. That's his position, similar to how Miles improved under Frank. Yeah, somewhat. I mean, I think more style will be important here, although it could help that he's got that experience. It won't hurt. Sam Williamson said, did Yamil Assad play under him at Velez? Well, when Yamil went back to Velez from D.C., he didn't play. Let me see if that lined up specifically with when Heinze was there. Before Assad came here, no, because again, Heinze was not at Velez that long. He took over during the summer break in the 2017-18 season. So his first games with Velez were in 2018. Yamil had already come to MLS by that point. When he went back to Velez in 2019, yes, Heinze was there, and Heinze didn't play him. So I don't know what that means, just that he was there and he didn't play. But that's the only period of time, was the 2019 portion for it would have been the end of the 2018-19 Argentine season. And then by that point, Velez wasn't renewing Yamil's contract, so he wouldn't have factored in after that. Let's see what else we got here. Actually, you know what? Before we move on, because I know we'll have plenty more to talk about, why don't you thank our good friend Steve Apolinsky?
I could do that. Apolinsky and Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here in the SDH network for wrongful death and serious injury matters. There is one place that you need to check out if this is a question that you need to have answered. A couple different ways that you can do it. You can get a free consultation by giving Apolinsky and Associates a phone call at 404-377-9191. You can shoot Steve an email and get answers directly from him, STEVE, at aa-legal.com, or you can go to the homepage on the World Wide Web website, aa-legal.com, large device or small. You hit enter, you hit return, you hit the arrow key, you hit advance, whatever moves it to the homepage, and a pop-up window pops up, because that's what pop-up windows do. They pop up 24/7, 365 and a quarter. Thank you, Chris Hutchison. And questions can be answered inside that pop-up window. You can have a conversation with an individual and have questions answered right then and there. aa-legal.com, the website homepage. Over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for their clients in Georgia and Alabama, recognized as legal elite by Georgia Trend Magazine for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia for wrongful death and serious injury matters. There's one place to go. It is Apolinsky and Associates, LLC. The website is aa-legal.com.
No, it's about the normal time.
Yeah. You try to sit there and you're adding in other facts and things like that and try to present other facts and evidence, and then it does go a little longer.
Okay. Hold on. Oh, wait a minute. If I can make things work.
Uh-oh.
End of the year roster moves announced by Atlanta United. Carlos Bocanegra will be available via conference call at 11 a.m. 17 players under contract for 2021. Contract options exercised on George Bello and Franco Escobar and Mo Adams and John Gallagher. Declined contract options on Andrew Carlton, Edgar Castillo, Manuel Castro, Lagos Kunga, Brendan Moore, Kubo Torres, J.J. Williams, and Lawrence Wyke. Jeff Lorenowitz is out of contract. Moore and Torres will participate in the upcoming CONCACAF Champions League. Training camp scheduled to start on Monday. Okay. So now the next steps with these players in terms of what happens with them. Lorenowitz and Torres would be available through free agency due to their age and how long they've been in the league. Castillo, Castro, Kunga, Moore, Williams, and Wyke would be available through the re-entry process. And that's, again, down to age and length of service in the league. Carlton would be available through the end-of-the-year waivers, age and service in the league. That's what affects where they go through. So the roster for 21, as it currently stands, and Twitch Pitch, I'm going to skip ahead from all of the conversation before so we can get reactions to all of this. 2021 roster right now, November 24th. Brad Gazan, Alec Can in goal. Defenders, Bello, Campbell, Escobar, Lennon, Meza, Efrain Morales, who joins the first team on January 1st, Miles Robinson, Anton Walks. Midfielders, Mo Adams, Ezequiel Barco, Jurgen Dahm, John Gallagher, Emerson Heineman, Marcelino Moreno, Jake Mulraney, Eric Remedi, Mateos Josetu, Tyler Wolf. Forwards, Adam John, Eric Lopez, who joins the first team effective January 1st, and Joseph Martinez. So Lorenowitz and Torres would go through free agency. Torres and Moore will participate in the upcoming Scotiabank CONCACAF Champions League. So they'll be at training camp. So Torres will be out of contract and be a free agent. He has elected to participate in CCL. Brendan Moore will go through the reentry process, but he has elected to participate with Atlanta United in CCL as well. That's the announcement. Carlos Bocanegra available at 11 a.m. for media availability. I'm assuming we're probably still going to be on the air at that time. So as people talk about it and tweet about it, we will let you know. Yeah. So, scrolling forward, there was a lot of Heinze talk, which is very good, and we'll continue all of it. But, yeah, stuff is ramping up, so this is going to get very, very interesting. Any tweets about everything straight away?
Nothing about anything straight away.
Okay, everybody's yelling about roster moves, breaking news. Yes, we had it. We were ready. I just hit the wrong button because I didn't turn the sound back up. Let's see here. Ricky, I tried to change from a more dramatic breaking news. The other one was really kind of like, whoa! So I wanted something to feel more epic. DK says, really surprised they let Wyke walk. He played a good bit this season. We don't know what the terms of the option would have been. Sometimes you see that option as a bigger number than maybe you're comfortable with. He could be re-signed.
Yeah.
You do see sometimes where the player says, what's the future for me here? And it's, as a rotation player, well, I think I can play more elsewhere. Okay, then we're going to decline and we're going to let you go. Don't know what the situation was that time. Okay, we'll change the breaking news, Alex Pacine. Man,
wow.
Trying to change things up. And Anyway, just kidding. Monteflo talking about Wyke said, not to mention his wages must have been lower, but maybe because of the international roster slot, and that factors into it in Wyke as well. Four-Card says, glad to see Franco will be back. I think so, too. I don't think he's going anywhere. But remember, you're picking up the option so they don't walk. Because if you don't pick up the option, they're out of contract. It doesn't mean that these players, that list that I gave you of who's under contract for 21, 17 players, it doesn't mean every one of them is in uniform opening day. It means you control what happens next, and that's where you always want to be. You picked up the option on Julian Gressel, for example, traded him because you couldn't come to a long-term agreement. Don't know the situation here, and I'm assuming it will be asked at 11, is this the last option on Escobar's contract? If it is, then he's going into the last year of his deal. You want to sign him to a new deal, or you want to move now. Those things factor in. Got to remember all that. Let's see. DK's already calling for 3 hours. Well, maybe. Badger talks about the option stuff. Jigaray says, only homegrowns left is Bello, Campbell, Morales, and Wolf. That's correct. Bello was in I guess technically it would be the third class of homegrowns, because you had Carlton signed, you had Goslin signed, then you had the group signed, and Bello is the one from that group. Campbell was signed ahead of this year. Wolf was signed early in the season, and Morales was signed like midway. So you've got 4 right now. And it happens. I mean, Dallas, who's produced a ton of homegrowns, they've went through that too, where you have guys that you sign to a homegrown deal, and it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't work out. You have guys that move on, and it works out somewhere else. It's just part of the game. It does go. DK says, I see a nice raise heading towards Bello. Well, in the option, maybe, but probably in a long-term deal, yes. And I would imagine that that'll be kind of the trajectory we'll follow here is you pick up the option, you're not going anywhere, we're not letting you go anywhere, we're not letting you out of contract, come on, are you crazy? And now let's talk about a long-term deal. I think that's the way it goes. No surprise on Lorenowitz being out of contract. He's done 1-year deals for the last couple of years. That's been pretty typical. Let's see. Yes, this is not a set roster. Yes, this is going to evolve. Yes, this is going to continue to shift around, and there's going to be work to do just from flat-out numbers. You're not going to go into the season with 17 players. You will have reinforcements. You will have moves. You could potentially have players picked up in waivers and re-entry. It's all going to get really interesting the rest of the way, getting ready for next season now. Things are really starting to pick up. 4Card says it's a shame that Andrew, the first homegrown, didn't work out. And I completely agree. I think Andrew Carlton's a really talented soccer player. I've wondered for a little while about the physical attributes and if they would be high enough, and I'm talking speed, I'm talking strength, if they would be good enough at the next level. And I think it's a valid question. I think he has the talent to play at whatever level he wants. I think he has the creativity to play at whatever level he wants. But there are questions physically about him, and can he be at that next level? There's questions, with mindset as well. And those are not new, and I really hope, because he's an incredibly talented player, he's the kind of player that I love to watch, I really hope it works out for him. And I hope he goes somewhere where he will play. He doesn't need to go somewhere where it's a bigger club, but the playing time is less. I hope wherever he ends up, he gets to play to where he can potentially grow into that guy. I want him to be successful, and it's not going to happen here. There wasn't going to be the playing time for him here next year, no matter what. He hadn't gotten to that point. He hadn't pushed an Ezequiel Barco out of the way yet. He hadn't pushed a Marcelino Moreno or an Emerson Heineman out of the way yet, if you see him in those positions. Like, the time wasn't there for him, so he's got to go find that elsewhere. It happens. It happens, and he's a local kid. He's a local kid. You want him to be successful wherever he ends up. There's no ill will. There's no negativity there. It is, he's got the opportunity to be a successful soccer player and to be a pro. I hope he can take that, and I hope he lands in the right spot.
No, I mean, we saw, for those that watched the USL Championship this past season and got to duck in on Indy 11 games, you got to see what Andrew Carlton could be. Very talented player, and was a part of that offense that was, successful at points for Indy 11. And that was the player that I know a lot of folks wanted to see here with Andrew Carlton. But you got to see that in Indianapolis as well, and you're hoping that he gets that opportunity someplace where he can continue to be that player that we saw in 2020 in Indianapolis.
But you wouldn't see that here, because it was good at the USL Championship level.
Right.
He's not starting here. Not with the roster that you have. So it's not good for him to come back. No. And that's, I think, the number one thing about this. You can get into how you feel about him with things that have been said, things that have happened, all of that. He's a kid. He's still a kid. I think he has a bright future. But he's got to continue to show it. And it's got to progress past Indy. I mean, Jigga Ray's with you. Like, Thought he was progressing. I thought he looked good in Indy. He wasn't playing at a level there that said he's got to play in Atlanta next year. Are there MLS teams I think he can play for? Yes. And he needs to end up with one where he plays.
Right.
And is there enough of a track record to get that time somewhere? It's tough. It's tough. If he gets a choice, if he's not picked up in the waiver draft, he needs to go somewhere where he can win time. And maybe that's USL. I hope not, because I think he's a better player than that. But I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm not shocked by that one. Same with Lagos Kunga. And I've known Lagos since he was an even younger kid. One of the best guys you'll meet. He's doing awesome things, coaching, doing individual training for kids. And kids love him. Lagos will have a long-term career in this sport in a lot of different ways. I think he can play at the USL level. He hasn't progressed to an MLS level player yet. Went to Phoenix and was competing for time in a really good team, and he didn't get a ton of it. I want Lagos to be successful in whatever that means. I don't know if he's an MLS level talent. And it doesn't mean he's not a good soccer player. It doesn't mean he's a bad guy, any of those things. Just don't know if he's that level of a talent. And that happens, and that's okay. But Lagos has used every bit of the opportunity that's been handed to him for good things. So, you'll look back and you'll say, well, some of those first signings didn't work out. Not every homegrown signing will. For a Barcelona, it won't, let alone for a club that's 4 years old. It doesn't mean people aren't doing their jobs. It doesn't mean players aren't good. It doesn't mean those things. It means it didn't work out. We'll see what Carlton, what Kunga go on and do. Waiting to see where Chris Goslin could end up. Patrick Okonkwo spent some time in League One at the end of the season with Chattanooga. I think he's a player who can play. It's like, where do these guys end up and what happens next for them? Sometimes it's not going to be here, and that's part of the business. It's okay. Lagos will be fine. I think Andrew will be fine with his talent. They just need to end up in the right places to play games because that progression is very important. J-Dub says, so how much space do these roster moves make in the budget? That's the big question. We don't know. We don't know because the Players Association did not release salaries for the 2020 season. They don't have to. They've done it on their own. They have opted not to do that for the 2020 season. So it's a total guessing game. There's really not even an easy way to guess, to be perfectly honest. We know Brad Gazan's under contract through 23. We don't know the amounts. We know options were picked up with Bello, with Escobar, with Adams, with Gallagher, so we know they're at least under contract for another year. I don't know how much longer Eric Remedi would have on his deal. I wouldn't expect Adam Johns on a long-term deal, so maybe it was a 2-year deal to begin with. Joseph was on a longer-term deal. Miles was on a longer-term deal. Barco was on a longer-term deal, although how much longer is a question. I would have guessed it was probably a 5-year deal to begin with. Dom was signed for more than just the half season without an option, so maybe it's a 2-year-plus deal. Hindman signed a deal. Moreno just signed a deal that was reported at 5.5. So you've got a bunch of guys that are under contract for a little while. You do have some that you have questions about. Amounts? There's just no way to know. I wish I could answer you, J-Dub, but there's no way to know that. Sean, yes, the 11 a.m., it's a media conference call. So, yeah, it's a press availability.
Yeah.
Badger says about Carlton, sometimes you need to go somewhere else to grow up. Absolutely. A lot of us did it. You go to college and you grow up. That's part of it. He didn't, have that opportunity. He turned pro at a young age, and he's had a lot of expectations and a lot of pressure that we don't know about, and we don't know what that feels like. So that's why I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I want him to make it. He has the talent to. Going elsewhere, not having that Atlanta tag on him might help. It might free him up. You might see the best of Andrew Carlton going forward. I hope you do. I really hope you do. Could he go to Indianapolis? Forecard says to San Jose. I don't think he fits the San Jose system. It'd be a little bit of a stretch. Could he go back to Indy? Possibly. He seemed like he was well-liked there. Could he go to a lot of teams in USL Championship? Absolutely. But there's MLS teams I think he could fit in with, too. Shiva says, what's next for Jeff? He didn't know. He was asked after the final match, and he said he didn't know yet. So he's got to decide if he wants to come back for another year. I'd assume that there would be an opportunity for him here if he wanted to. It just depends on what he wants to do going forward. Matt Wagner says keeping more for CCL makes sense since Can just had shoulder surgery. Absolutely. And whatever you have to do to have him available. You have Ben Lundgaard as well from Atlanta United too, so you got 3 goalkeepers in that camp. You got to have cover in the time of COVID. You got to have extra cover. I mean, Atletico Paranaense is going into a game today in Libertadores with their number 1 and number 2 goalkeepers positive for COVID. So they're turning to number 3. You got to have cover in this camp right now. And if you're able to get more to come back and have that opportunity to train a little bit longer, it's good. It's good for him. It's also good for the team. It's necessary at the moment, for sure. J-Dub feels for Lagos as well. An ATL boy wished it would have worked better. I do too. I don't think there's any negativity about Lagos' time, though. He did well with Atlanta United, too, when he was here. He went out on loan to Memphis, did well there. Went out on loan to Phoenix, didn't get as much playing time as I think he would have hoped for, and I think everybody would have hoped for. But that was a tough spot to get playing time. I don't know if he's an MLS-level talent. I just don't, and that's not a bad thing. I think we're starting to understand that in this country now, that professional soccer players are players who get paid to play the game. And there are more levels than just MLS for that to happen now. And he can make a nice life for himself playing in USL Championship, playing in USL League One, coaching, doing all the things that he's doing. Lagos is a smart kid. Lagos is going to be just fine. But I hope he goes somewhere where he gets to play a good bit, like we saw in Memphis, where I think you started to see, like, all right, maybe there's a next step. Maybe there's a little bit more from him. Phoenix, he just didn't get the time to do it. Burns says, so unfortunately, Meza and Mulroney were not on one-year deals. That's very harsh, Burn. How many roster spots, non-supplemental, are actually open to improve this roster? And Burn, that says 5. Let's see if we can do a little bit of math. Let's see if we can figure this out. We will go to the MLS website. We will go to the Atlanta United roster, and we will look at the way it is constructed. Senior roster spots at the end of this season. Mo Adams, back. Barco, back. Castillo, not back. Castro, not back. So that's 2. Dom, Escobar, Gazan, Hindman, John, Can, Lorenowitz not back right now. That's 3. Lennon, Meza, Moreno, Mulroney, Remedi, Robinson, Josetu, Kubo, Torres is 4. Anton Walks. Joseph Martinez will be in one of those spots, so that's 3 senior roster spots that are open today. Supplemental spots, Gallagher is in one now. He might have to move into a senior roster spot. I don't know. It depends on years. It depends on a lot of things that I don't have in front of me. It also depends on the amount of money, which we won't know. So Gallagher could have to move into that. That's something to keep in mind. Supplemental spots, Bello, Campbell, Wolf are in them right now. Wyke would not be. So you would have, out of the section 1 of supplemental, 3 spots based off last year's roster open. Second area of supplemental, you would have 3 spots open. Morales would go into 1. Eric Lopez could go into that new U22 spot, and that's what we don't know where that fits with all this. I'm sure the other question will come up about international slots. Castro and Wyke would be out of those, so you would have 2 to work with going forward. So rough math, 3 senior spots, 3 supplemental A spots, 3 supplemental B spots is what we're looking at the moment, if I can do things correctly. And we don't know how that changes with that U22 situation.
Right. Tafka says he'll miss Carlton. He always seemed to to see the pass that would crack open a defense, thinks that Atlanta just wasn't where he could flourish, hoping Jeff comes back for one more, renegotiate?
Negotiate, because there's no he's out of contract completely. It's up to him. I mean, he was very good again, and that's the thing about Jeff Larentowicz. We keep thinking he's gotten too old, and he keeps showing us all up. It's up to him. I mean, this is a year that we've seen players retire because of how hard 2020 has been. Javier Mascherano just did, and he talked about it. He said that, 2020 was like adding more rocks to his backpack, and he couldn't continue to carry it anymore. Does Jeff feel that kind of way? Does he want to go out a different way? Does he want to go out in a more normal year? That, I think, also will weigh on people. It sounds like it's weighed on Chris Wondolowski in that way. So, very intrigued to see what happens with Jeff in the long term. DK says Kubo Torres will be playing for his career in the CCL match. One last opportunity to impress other clubs. He's got to fight for playing time first, and if he gets it and he does well, absolutely. And hopefully, if he does really, really well, more matches. I mean, you got to overturn a 3-0 deficit, but crazier things have happened in 2020. Jigare says, I'm curious on if the younger Carlton will progress into a homegrown. I've always seen and heard where he could be better than Andrew. He's still so young, it's really hard to call. I've seen him at the U14 level, and he's a special player. That doesn't always mean anything. Does he grow? Does he grow too tall? Does he not grow tall enough? Like, does he fill out? Does he not fill out? Like, there's so many things that are variables that we just won't know. Very talented player at U14, that was for sure. Liked the way he saw the game, liked the way he felt the game. He's been part of the academy from day one, so he's grown up in that professional environment. That will help. He's probably on that track, but there's a lot of kids in that academy that are on that track that are competing for time. Sean Vergara says, I'm surprised Remedi was picked up. He wasn't picked up. He was already under contract. That needs to be understood. The moves that happened where decisions had to be made were on options, and 4 were picked up. Bello, Escobar, Mo Adams, John Gallagher. Others were declined. Carlton, Castillo, Castro, Kunga, Moore, Kubo Torres, Williams, Wyke. Larentowicz is out of contract. So there wasn't a decision on Remedi. He was already under contract. Fender will probably talk more about coach rumors, yes, but we have talked about them. They are rumors ad nauseum. Thanks, Mizano. They are rumors. We'll see. Sam Williamson says, retirement announcement soon on Jeff. We're already jumping to conclusions. He said he's out of contract. So first off, he's out of contract. That has nothing to do with any decisions the team made. Second, he said on decision day, which was a couple weeks ago, that he didn't know what he was going to do yet. So that's what we know at this point. We'll have to see. We'll just have to see what he wants to do. Burned, good point. Houston maybe for Andrew Carlton. Tab likes him. Tab had him with the U20s. Tab was always very high on him. Could he fit there? Yeah, I think so. I think he'd potentially be competing with Memo Rodriguez, which is a tough one to compete with. But he's a player that Tab is very familiar with. That's a good shout. That might work. Wouldn't surprise me if Houston used a waiver claim on him at all. Let's see. What are your thoughts on Wyke? Shiva asks. I like Lawrence Wyke a lot.
Yeah.
Wyke is a guy who has really worked hard to get to where he's gotten because nobody expected that when he finished his college time. Great year with the twos in 19. That put him into this position to play with the first team in 20. He's a tweener in position. He's a tweener in terms of ability. It's going to depend on where he's at and who he's playing for as to where he fits. I don't think he has a position really nailed down yet. I'd probably look at him as a holding midfielder best. Right back, maybe. Center back would be the least likely out of where we've seen him play. Aggressive, great right foot. Is he an MLS starter? I don't think so. Is he an MLS player? Possibly. Is he a second division player? Absolutely, no question. So he's in that in between, and I think for him the decision will be: does he want to go and play more at a lower level, or does he want to play less at a higher level? And that's the decision that'll be in front of him. But I don't think he's a starting level guy in Major League Soccer.
Stuff in the Twitter has to deal with other teams and the playoffs for tonight.
Okay, well, we still got more. The Twitch pitch is not going anywhere. Let's see. So J-Dub says, so this does, in all caps, mean that Escobar is coming back for one more season, barring somebody throwing tons of money at us for him, ? It means his option was picked up. That's what it means. We'll see if Carlos Bocanegra says anything further about it, but it means his option was picked up. That was a necessity because you're not going to let him walk on a free. And this is where you get down to decisions. And look, this stinks for the guys whose options weren't picked up that wanted to still be here. It stinks for them. You know, these are guys who were here this year. These are guys who have friends in the team. You know, these are guys who probably wanted to stay. Some of them might have wanted to go because they might see there's more time elsewhere. But when you make these decisions, you picked up Bello, you picked up Escobar, you picked up Adams, you picked up Gallagher. You pick them up for multiple reasons. You pick them up because you want them here next year. You pick them up because they have value. The players that you don't pick up, you don't see them getting minutes here next year, or there's not value in picking up the option and then trading or selling. That's where that decision comes into play. So Escobar, all it means is his option has been picked up. I would love to see him here long term. We talked about the announcement from Disco. He just got a one-game suspension. I thought it would be more. He was fined in 3 separate ways, so the fine might be substantial. But he's going to miss one game. So there's not any of that hanging over it, which I don't think would have affected a long-term decision anyway. And with the rumor about Gabriel Heinze, you would think that potentially that would be a good thing for Franco Escobar and a good thing for him long-term here. So that could change the timeline a bit. But there's just no way to know. All this announcement means is that his option was picked up. That's it so far. Lots of people want Jeff to come back. And I think everybody does. I'd love to see him go out on his own terms and not go out in a crazy 2020 kind of year. Would love to see him have a better opportunity to go out in the way that he wants. Let's see. Burned, I think there will be more moves. I don't think where the roster is sitting today is where it will be, and not just filling open spots. I think there's probably going to be some more moves. You got to look to do that now. You've got a lot of teams in the league who could end up being really good trade partners. There could be players available in the league that would make this team better. You got to keep those ears open. You got an expansion team coming in, so they're going to have a lot of allocation money to throw around. They might make a move on somebody that you maybe didn't want to part with, but the offer might be too good. That could happen. Also, it was announced over the weekend that Rodrigo Rios, who was with the U19s out of the academy, he'll be joining Josh Wolf's first-team coaching staff. It's an upgrade for Rodrigo Rios, former Atlanta Silverbacks player, worked with the Silverbacks after his playing career ended, joined the Atlanta United Academy very early on, had great success there. Does Rodrigo Rios come in and say, hey, this is a guy we want. This is a guy that I watch train. This is a guy that I know. This is a guy that would be a good fit. And does a big offer come? That can happen too. So just because of where it stands, I don't think that necessarily means long-term this is all you have to work with. That's kind of where I'm at on it. But as it stands right now, 3 senior spots, 3 supplemental A's, and I'm separating them because that's how they're separated on the page. 3 supplemental A group, 3 supplemental B group spots. So that's 9 spots that should be open. It feels like there might be more, and I might be miscounting or things might move around a little bit. Because there should be, in one way or another, 13 if you have 17 under contract. The U22 section, we don't know how that's going to fit or what that's going to look like. All right. if you have more on Atlanta United stuff today, and that can be rumor, that can be these moves, we'll get into it in a minute. We do have to get into the MLS games tonight because you have 3 playoff matches, and it's the postseason. It's been crazy. It could get crazy again tonight. It starts at 6. It's Toronto hosting Nashville in Hartford, Connecticut. Nashville's lost 1 of their last 8. Toronto has lost 3 of their last 4, but they finally had some rest. Justin Morrow, Marky Delgado out for Toronto due to injury. Anibal Godoy out for Nashville, and that's a big out for Nashville. Hamstring injury, had been dealing with it. He didn't go on international duty. Gary Smith said he was like 3 minutes from getting subbed, and it went. So Todd Bryan Anunga will come in to replace him. He's been good, but he's never been in this spot before. Charleston, USL playoffs, Open Cup stuff, this ain't that. This is a whole different place. So can he handle it? He's going to be tested, and I'm sure Toronto will try to test him in a big, big way as much as they can. This will likely be the second time that Nashville will have all their designated players from the jump. Mokhtar, Leal, and Cadiz, they all started. They were all effective. Can they do it again on short rest? Toronto got extended rest. Robert Sabiga will have the whistle. Alan Kelly is the VAR. What do the odds makers think on this one?
In the composite, courtesy of our friends at Odds Portal, and this has not moved this morning since we've been on the air, Toronto is a plus 114, Nashville is a plus 250, and your draw is a plus 233.
Finally, Nashville getting respect. I'm blown away that Toronto's a plus. I think Toronto wins it. I think they have to really fight for it, though. Nashville will make it difficult for them, but I think Nashville will be affected by playing on short rest.
Yeah.
I think they will be affected without Godoy, and I think Toronto will be fresher than they have in a long time. I just can't doubt Toronto in this situation. We saw what they did last year in the postseason. They know what this is about. They know what it takes. You've got a manager in Vanny who will move the pieces around based off what he has to do to get a result. I think Toronto wins it 2-1 is where my head's at.
Yeah, I was thinking it was going to be a 1-goal game. Part of me was thinking that it was going to go longer than 90 minutes because of the defense of Nashville, but coming back on short rest, I put that opinion to the side. So I'm thinking it's going to be a 1-goal game for Toronto. 1-0, 2-1 was where I was thinking too.
Yeah, 2-1 is where my head's at. Philadelphia hosting New England, 8 o'clock. Philadelphia at home, dating back to last season, 9 straight wins. Combined scoreline of 24-4. 6 times these teams have played this season, which is nuts. Philadelphia's won 4 of them. The other one was a draw. Philadelphia has not lost at home this season. You get Andre Blake back from an injury to his hand. For New England, look, if Carlos Heel and Gustavo Bo have a game like they did on Friday, they got a puncher's chance. 14 chances created between the two of them. They both scored on Friday. Bo had the winner late. If both of them don't have games like they did on Friday, New England does not compete here. I think the rest affects New England again as well. Philadelphia will take advantage of that. I think they're the better team anyway, but I do think they wear them down. I'll go 3-1 Philadelphia.
Okay, I had 2-0 Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a plus 104. New England a plus 245. Your draw is a plus 271. Rich Ransom has come in this morning, and he has said, tonight, breathe in, followed by the word panic 26 times.
No.
And then breathe out, hashtag MLS Cup playoffs. And he says he's not going to lie. We talked a lot of bleep this season. The Negadelphia worry is the Union hopefully won't Virginia/Tampa Bay Lightning this tonight.
Rich, my friend, don't be so negative. Don't be Negadelphia. Don't do that stuff. No reason to panic. You're the better team. You're playing a team on short rest. Philadelphia is the favorite to win MLS Cup. Embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be arrogant about it. but embrace it.
No.
Don't be scared. Don't be afraid. Philadelphia should win this game. If they don't, then it's a failure. They should win. Yeah. They should be in control. I think they will be. I think they're good enough to do that.
Yep.
Seattle and LAFC, 10:30. LAFC, still salty about last year. They got knocked out of the Western Conference final by Seattle at Bank of California. Seattle had a player test positive that was announced last night. We don't know who that is. It was a first-team player. They will miss the match. No concerns about anything else because everybody else has tested negative multiple times. LAFC is missing 4 players due to COVID. Diego Rossi, Brian Rodriguez, Diego Palacios, Jose Cifuentes, Andy Nahar, Danny Musovski, also out due to injury. 3 meetings this season. Home team won every time. 2 of them were in Seattle. Seattle won 2 of them. Seattle had kind of tripped up a little bit late in the year, but they scored 4 goals in the second half on decision day to beat San Jose. Maybe that's a step in the right direction. LAFC, look, who knows? They looked pretty good on decision day, and then they gave up a late equalizer to Portland. They might start 16-year-old Christian Torres. Bob Bradley kind of hinted at that this week. Kevin Stott is your referee here. Jorge Gonzalez is the VAR. What are the numbers?
Seattle's a plus 108. LAFC's a plus 223. And your draw is a plus 282.
I think that's the biggest number we've ever seen for LAFC.
I think you're right.
It should be. I don't think they are anything close to favored here. And I'm still baffled at how people look at LAFC as a juggernaut at this point. I just don't get it. We don't know who that player is who tested positive, so we don't know who Seattle will be missing, and that will affect it. But I just don't see how Seattle loses this game. They should win it. They're the better team on paper. If everybody's full strength, I think they're the better team. They're much more the better team without Diego Rossi on the field or Brian Rodriguez. Palacios and Cifuentes are big absences, but you're missing your leading scorer in Rossi. You're missing a player who is somewhat starting to come into his own in Brian Rodriguez, and you just don't have replacements. And your defense has been leaky all year long. So I think Seattle wins it 4-2.
Oh, wow. I was thinking that LAFC wasn't really going to get a whole lot of offense. I was going to go 2-0. Just because of all those absences, and they probably lock Vela down and focus on him, and so you counteract that. I don't see who else can be that substitute for that offense with all those absences. So I said Seattle winning it 2-0. They'll get one first 20 minutes, and then they'll get one in the first 10 minutes of the second half, and it's fairly comfortable.
So I will take, let's see, looking back at these games. The one I feel the best about is Philadelphia on New England. So I will put the good plate of dark meat turkey, dressing, not stuffing, dressing. I like the dressing a little bit better. There is a difference, by the way. And the good gravy, the good plate of turkey, dressing, and gravy. And I'm putting that on Philadelphia. Which one am I next best about? Seattle's who I feel next most confident about. And I will take the really good, fancy, like crust baked on top mac and cheese. Not the, just all orange looking mac and cheese. I'm talking
where it's
work has
too
been
much
put
cheese.
into it. No, not about too much cheese. That has nothing to do with it. You can put all the cheese you want into it if you do it properly. Crust baked on top, good mac and cheese on Seattle. And Toronto's the one I'm not as confident about. So I will take what do I take a chance on at Thanksgiving? I will take I'll take the pumpkin pie on Toronto because I like pumpkin pie. It's good. Sometimes it's not as good as other times. It's a little risky. I'll take the pumpkin pie, assuming I don't have like whipped cream or vanilla ice cream or something to put on it, because that can always save it.
Yeah.
I don't have that. I got to take a risk on the pumpkin pie. I'm going to take it. I'm going to put it on Toronto.
Okay. So then what I'll do is I'll put lemon meringue pie on Philadelphia. I'll put cranberry out of the can.
Well, you got to explain it, John. What does that mean? Is the lemon meringue pie important to you? Is it not important to you? Like,
it is like my number one dessert is lemon meringue pie for me. That is my number one. If it's lemon meringue pie, that's where I gravitate toward first. Then I end up having dessert before I end up having the meal.
Why am I not surprised? Go ahead.
So that's where I'll go with Philadelphia. I'll go cranberry out of the can with Seattle.
Because you think that's really, really good.
Because I think that's really, really good. And so then third of those three would be Toronto. I'll go, okay, so here's where I'll go with Toronto. The boss makes a green bean dish that is very, very good, and you didn't hear me just say that. So it is a very, very good green bean dish.
Why?
But
Why? Your wife makes a really good dish.
I'm
and
accepting
you're telling
of a
us
vegetable
not
here.
to.
I'm accepting of a vegetable.
Oh, it's because you're 8 years old. Okay, I got it. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead. I would like to think you would be really giving the big ups about how good of a dish this is. Just saying.
I am.
No, you're not. You said don't tell anybody.
I'm publicly denying that I will have ever said this, though.
It
is a very, very good. It is a very good dish. So here's what I'm saying. It's a very good dish, and what she does is she bakes it with bacon, and there's also I think it's oil and vinegar and sugar to go with the sauce that it bakes in. So that's what jazzes it up, and it's very, very good. So I'll go with that with Toronto.
Okay.
So
I don't know if that was good or bad.
Very, very good green bean dish with a
you don't even know what it's called, do you?
It's just it's green beans with a sauce.
It's green beans with a sauce. Okay, sure.
It's a good green beans with. I mean, that's
I'm assuming it probably has some kind of a name.
I'll ask her. I mean, it's not like. It's not like her grandmother's rice dish.
That's not what I'm saying.
Which really, if I was to put a food on Philadelphia, I would put her grandmother's rice dish on Philadelphia. It is that good. It was one of the first things that when she cooked meals here, and it was one of the first things that I gravitated toward. It is white rice, beef consomme, and oleo. And you basically just dump them all in there, and obviously the white rice turns brown, and it's very, very thick, and I will have it as a meal on its own. If you want me to have a meal attached to it instead of a dessert, grandmother's...
Oh, okay, sorry. Got it. Go ahead.
Yeah, the grandmother's rice dish would be the food substitute for Philadelphia if you wanted me to put a food there instead of a dessert.
Okay, so other people's takes... Badgers going green bean casserole on Toronto.
Okay.
And he says if bacon is involved, his rabbi would definitely allow his openly risking of it. Accurate. Domer says completely homemade from scratch chocolate icebox pie on Philly.
Oh, that's strong.
Yeah. Mazzano says you go to a restaurant and ask for the rice dish, which is very funny.
Yes.
Modiflow.
Well, no, I don't.
Modiflow. No, you would. Modiflow is understanding why multiple generational Americans like Thanksgiving after hearing about all of these things. Pacine said, I grew up with Cuban-American style Thanksgiving, ham, turkey, and roast pork. I'm coming to Pacine's house.
Nice.
I feel for some of you with your Thanksgiving trauma. Find someone to feed you properly, please. I agree. Abby's putting her homemade apple pie, and she was bragging on it, on Philadelphia.
Nice.
So it seems like everybody is most on board with Philadelphia, except for the resident Philadelphia fan, Rich Ransom, who is panicking.
Yes.
Rich, come on, man. Modiflow is asking about your Scunthorpe top.
I am a member of the Iron Trust, and this is the first time that I have trotted this out. They were changing manufacturers for their contract for all of their gear, and so they had a special last year. So I have a couple of different things from Scunthorpe, but I'm a member of the Iron Trust. #UTI. Up the iron.
I missed, but Shooter dropped in earlier, and he was asking us to go dupe, thinking we would jinx them. Shooter, I'm sorry. I think this is the end of the road for your Revs, and you will probably have some very horrible things that will get blocked by the bots and the admins and all of that on the chat to talk about your boys. But I think it's the end of the road. I'm not down on New England at all. I like Carlos Gil. I like Gustavo Bo. I think Bruce Arena's done a good job there. I just don't think they're as good as Philadelphia. If you'd had Bo playing where he needs to play and you'd had Carlos Gil all year, I don't think you're in this spot. I think you're a better team. I think you're a top 4 team in the East potentially. But with the injuries you had, this is the year you had. It ends tonight, I think. Sorry. I like you, Shooter. And I do want to really see what you're going to have to say about the game. I'm excited about that. That's maybe the thing I'm looking forward to the most tomorrow. That's for sure. Modiflo is bummed that he's never seen mac and cheese for Thanksgiving dinner.
Whoa,
man. J-Dub, and that's why you got to. We'll get you in the mix here, Modiflo, one of these days when we don't have COVID to deal with. J-Dub says Parker House rolls on Seattle. I'm assuming that's a good thing.
Yeah,
J-Dub.
I'm assuming so too.
Lots of stuff, lots of back and forth here. Okay. We got another one. Cinnamon Jello on Philly?
Interesting.
Thad?
I've never heard of that.
Explain.
I've never heard of that one.
I'm very confused. I do not know. What did you say was in the rice dish?
It's white rice with beef consomme and margarine.
Margarine.
Basically,
what did you call the margarine?
Take the whole I said oleo.
Oleo. Okay. Sorry,
you take the whole frickin' stick and put it in there with the beef consomme and the white rice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Stacey's rice. It is the go-to. It is amazing.
Man. Okay. No other teams have made any announcements about roster stuff yet. I was wondering if you might see a few others pop. They got till the end of the month. Any other news? There is a report we haven't talked about yet that's kind of an interesting one with the LA Galaxy. According to Tom Marshall of ESPN, Alex Alcala is going to sign with the Galaxy to a pro deal. He's 15. He's eligible to play for either the U.S. or Mexico. Currently with Mexico's U16s. Very, very highly rated prospect. Rumors are that Manchester City has purchased an option to acquire him when he turns 18. They can't acquire him until he turns 18. Reportedly, they have that option to do so. He has trained with Manchester City. He's trained with Barcelona. He's trained in Mexico with Pachuca in the past. Nothing's been confirmed officially, but Alex quote tweeted a report from Jóvenes Futbolistas MX, which covers young Mexican players, that says what we just said. He's a new player of the LA Galaxy. Manchester City has the option to buy at 18, and Alex quote tweeted it with the bicep emoji. So you would like to think that that is a done deal. He was born in California as well, so he would not take up an international slot. He has been dubbed, as anybody who has any talent on the ball gets dubbed these days, except he's from Mexico. So the Mexican Messi is what he has been dubbed. We'll see. That's a lot for a 15-year-old to live up to.
Yeah.
But there are reports that he has been signed, and he is a very highly rated prospect. So that will be very interesting. Chicago has signed a player, Modiflo. I was getting there. In Ecuadorian international defender Jean Espinoza. Signed from Aucas. That was announced yesterday. Signed through the 2023 season with 2 club options after that. He's 21, 48 times with Aucas that he's played. Broke through with Cuenca, most often as a right back. 2 appearances with the senior national team, was a regular for the U20s. He played alongside Cifuentes and Palacios for LAFC, and also the new player for Orlando, Alex Alvarado. George Heights from Chicago, their sporting director, said, Jean is a talented young right fullback who will be a great addition to the club. With Jean's signing, we have added another player who will provide more competition and quality within the roster heading into next season. We're excited he's coming to Chicago and look forward to working with him. That was a position Chicago needed to get better in. That's a good pickup. They had already announced the acquisition of a 20-year-old Nigerian forward, Chinoso Ofor. They're getting younger, and that's reportedly where they want to go. They got 29 players under contract for 2020. They've got the decisions to make on some. Heights told media last week that 7 international players are in the final stages of receiving their green cards. Which, wow, that's a lot all at once. We don't know how many of those 29 will be back in 21. I'm assuming not all of them. So there will be spots, and it sounds like there'll be international spots. Chicago will be very interesting to follow. They're getting very young.
Yeah. Monteflow's analysis says it's an interesting signing. He says he's a physical specimen who's far more technical than he looks, but there's a reason he's only just now leaving Aucas. Many see him more of a center back, but I think right back suits him just fine. He has potential. MLS might be what he needs to grow. As for the Fire, this is good business. Aucas seems to be having a sale on all their players with recognition or potential. Montano to Independiente del Valle, Alvarado to Orlando. If you're an MLS team and need decent but cheap players, Ecuador is your market. Only a few of the most recognizable players from the historic 2019 U20 Ecuador team are still in Ecuador. Some of them made terrible moves. Anyone who went to Emelec or Barcelona SC, most of the heroes from that team are finding regular time with their clubs. Moises Ramirez getting games with Independiente del Valle. Richard Mina usually starts for Aucas, might be the next to move. Gustavo Vallecilla, BSC, but just realized they should play him more or he'll leave. Jordi Alcivar's playing with LDU Quito. And Montevlo says in all caps, ATL sign him with an exclamation point. And Sergio Quintero copy and paste Vallecilla. So that is your Montefloian analysis.
Okay. Did you say copy and paste at the end?
Well, no, that's what Monteflo is saying about Sergio Quintero. Copy and paste Vallecilla. BSC just realized they should play him more or he'll leave.
There you go. Okay, got it. Now it makes sense. All right, we got this. Maybe that's a better breaking news for some of you guys. Monteflo ran out of characters. Thank you. This came up yesterday when Zlatan tweeted about it and yelling about FIFA using his likeness. Meanwhile, in 2002, he was on the cover of FIFA in Sweden. I'm just saying. And he's been in a lot of FIFA games. But he was complaining about it. Gareth Bale said something about it. David Ornstein at The Athletic is writing about something that's growing in a really weird way. Hundreds of players in the Premier League, EFL, National League, and Scottish Premiership are taking legal action over the use of their performance and tracking data. If successful, the claim is expected to be worth hundreds of millions of pounds. More than 400 current and former players have signed up to pursue gaming, betting, and data processing companies who utilize their personal statistics without consent or compensation. They aim to recover lost income stretching back 6 years. That's the statute of limitations in UK law. They want to secure payouts, potentially running into tens of thousands of pounds per person, depending on the level a player has competed at and the amount of exposure they have attained. The challenge is not targeting clubs, even if they've handled players' data. The intention is to educate them on how best to treat it in the future, rather than seek to bring them into this action. It is called Project Red Card. The experienced manager Russell Slade, alongside a team of data specialists and lawyers, led by the respected UK firm Freeths. They claim the statistics are being used unlawfully and anticipate a majority of male and female footballers in Britain will join the effort. This is weird.
Yeah.
There's levels to this that I somewhat get. Okay, how are the names and likenesses being used in FIFA? That's a different conversation. That's not the statistical thing. I mean, you can rate players, and you can say you rate them on whatever you want to rate them on. You can say people watch and come to their own conclusions. I think you can get around that. But names and likenesses, I think that goes through FIFA Pro, which has a relationship with the FIFA video games, Electronic Arts. So I think that part's covered. Gaming sites use statistics. I mean, if you go to my Prize Picks, for example, and sign up and pick the over-under on a soccer player, the statistics, I guess, help inform what that initial number will be. Should players get a cut of that? Should players get a cut of stats being on a WhoScored.com, a SofaScore, whatever site you're looking at? I don't think so. It feels very odd to me.
Yeah, it does.
Because couldn't, and maybe they're going to have to going forward. Maybe they're not going to have it shared by the league or by the team. But couldn't these people hire their own statisticians to watch games and track what happens? And is that wrong?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem wrong. I don't know. Like,
no.
I mean, I guess it's, can people monetize your statistics? But no, monetizing yourself, that's different to me, because they're saying people are monetizing the statistics, and I own my statistics. But do you own your statistics? Because the game is public. People can watch it from anywhere and put their analysis to it. It's a weird one. I mean, because I would imagine that if this is successful, then you will see the same happen in the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball and in every other sport. And where does this go? Does it result in gaming companies? And it's not as much, although video games are going to be a factor here. I think they're a different factor. My guess is this is a way to create relationships and revenue through online betting, through daily fantasy, through all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to get a cut if you are listed somewhere.
Right.
Does it turn into essentially like the royalties that somebody gets for doing a song when it's used somewhere?
Yeah.
I don't know. This feels really strange. I don't know if they can pull this off. It feels like a reach. It feels like a very strange thing to be undergoing at the moment. That's just me.
Yeah, well, and you talk it through, and you're trying to sit there, and every time somebody's mentioned, it's like, okay, so if you're part of daily fantasy, then it's almost like giving yourself a per diem for every mention that you're given in a daily fantasy situation because of your statistics. And the more times that you're mentioned, the more times that you would get a cut of that daily effort. Where, if you're and obviously it's weighted toward the stars, and so the stars would have more mentions in that daily fantasy or monetizing your numbers kind of a thing. Whereas the lower players wouldn't be getting that kind of monetization, I wouldn't think, because they're not mentioned as much in DFS.
Right, and I mean, what are you going to National League players about? Like stats just being posted somewhere? Like, if you just post somebody's stats, like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. This feels like a reach. It feels like a money grab. I'm not buying it at this stage. I want to hear the case that they make. The EA side is different in two ways. Like, name and likeness in a video game that's come up with college athletes. And they didn't use names, but they used likenesses. They used, obviously, trying to tell you this is that player. Yeah. That got stopped. So the name and likeness is done through FIFA Pro. So they have the rights to do it. It's not like they're not getting the rights, I wouldn't think. That would be a huge mistake by EA's part. But if you're going the step further to, like, their ratings, I mean, that can be done by people watching and saying he's a 75 in pace, he's an 80 in finishing. Like, I don't know. This feels like a bit of a reach. And it feels like it's a step. Like El Mataflo says, who's to say it won't help non-professional players? I don't know what their argument is to say that their stats are being used to make somebody else money. Because, I mean, to me, that's the argument. If the stats are being posted on a newspaper website, is the newspaper making money from that? Not really. Is anybody? Not really. I get the gaming side, okay.
Right.
I get the video game side, okay. If it is out there for informational purposes, are you entitled to money from that? Unless you're getting a percentage of whatever advertising revenue the site has, which, I mean, you're getting pennies here and there.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Like, newspapers barely make money. Totally, Modiflow. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, the only places where I see, like, there's revenue coming from these things are betting and video games.
Yep.
And video games, at least name and likeness is covered. Are now you going to say that players can't be rated? I don't know how you make that argument, because you're already getting something for for being in the game. And then on the betting side, now that is an angle that is interesting, but how do you make that work? I don't know.
But I think that your music analogy to me was probably the best way that I thought that could happen when it comes to players and betting, where every time somebody ends up on a board, they get a cut of whatever. And like a song being
not
downloaded.
on the board. Like, I think you'd have to get a cut of what revenue comes in. So what is bet on them?
Right.
Like, just because they're on the page,
you're on the
doesn't
board.
mean
Yeah,
anything.
you're on the board. People bet on that number. You want to get a cut of that action.
I'm guessing. Now, Byrne has a point, and this is the part I don't know. It says, but what if the clubs told the players in the union that the GPS data, and that's getting into a very specific angle, would be used to optimize performances of the team, and then turns around and sells the data to EA? I'd be ticked off too. That's valid. But if it's a public game, like if it's training data, I'm totally with you, Byrne.
Yeah.
If it is a game where now people can create systems to measure these things from a broadcast, if it's a public event and somebody measures it for whatever way they want, do you get a cut of what you did in that public event? I don't have the answer. I mean, it's an interesting legal case. Training data, I'm totally with what Byrne's saying. If they sold that and they said, well, yeah, you're doing your ratings, EA, here's what they do in these training sessions, et cetera, et cetera. If they monetize that, then yes, the player should get a cut. But game data, I don't know if they have the argument there. I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see how this goes. Very, very interesting. I do not know what the answer is going to be to it. But that is a new one. And look, it's coming at a time when, they're not going after the clubs, which is good because the clubs are all losing money at the moment. But do they affect some of the other business situations within the game? We'll have to see. Byrne says, I don't think you can do like the running distance from a broadcast, or maybe you can. I thought maybe you could. I don't know. I haven't been on that side of it, so I'm not 100% sure. KFC brings up the wearing the gear, the vests and stuff to track the in-the-game info. That's for the team, and if that got sold, I can follow that path to, okay, something's up. But if it was approved to make it public information, then there's not an argument to me. So if, let's say it was with Opta, it's, okay, we're going to include this data in Opta's reporting on the game, and then it's just out there for everybody. I don't know if there's justification for a lawsuit. But again, I'm not a lawyer. So lawyers, activate. Have at it. This will be an interesting one to see. This will be a very interesting one to see how it plays out. Carlos Bocanegra speaking to the media right now. Obviously, I am not on the call. I am with you guys. Here's some updates from Mike Conti. Jeff Larinowitz, Carlos Bocanegra says, will not be back with Atlanta United. Larinowitz is still determining his plans for next season. So he will not be back, according to Carlos Bocanegra right now. I'd be surprised if that changed. On Andrew Carlton, quote, and this is from Mike's Twitter, Mike Conti 929. We had him here. We had him on loan with Indy where he did a good job, but we didn't see him having a future with a big role on our first team. He just needs to get in the right situation and right style to suit him and his game. And I would totally agree with that. I think that is accurate. The Jeff Larinowitz one is a surprise. So that's maybe the biggest surprise we have learned so far is that he will not be back with Atlanta United next season. He might play, but he will not be back. And that has been spread around. So I'll be curious to see what happens next with that. Let's see here. We'll stay on while all this is going on, and we'll kind of keep you posted. You guys are following all the usual suspects on Twitter. Joe Patrick's on the call. Doug Robertson's on the call. Mike Conti's on the call. Felipe Cardenas is on the call. So everybody will be tweeting about this. So we're going to kind of hang out and watch along with you guys and pay attention along with you guys. Let's see what else we got as things come up. A lot of still conversation about the player stuff with lawsuits, and we'll keep you posted on all that. Modiflow, this one might be interesting to you. Velez, and this is from Velez in English, their Twitter account. Alexander Dominguez tested positive for COVID-19 after international duty, where there was an outbreak among Ecuador's national team. We have to wonder why the staff chose to keep him in the bench, and medical staff agreed knowing that. So I guess he was with Velez on the weekend, and now he's tested positive, and now there's concern that it could spread throughout the team. As people try to figure out how to deal with all this, man, you're seeing some crazy things happen all over the map.
Yeah. Tafka's got a question. When might we hear on homegrown contracts like Conway? Fingers crossed emoji. There are no timeline restrictions, right?
No timeline restrictions. Like Efrain Morales, it was announced early. His contract was going to take effect January 1. Could be any time. The spots are there, like we said, out of those supplemental spots. Looks like there's 6 available potentially to be used. So you've got plenty of room for homegrowns. Conway would be one that would be in that mix, I would think. And the fact that he got the opportunity to be part of the CONCACAF squad, to at least be part of the training, I think that means he's well thought of, and he could get that opportunity. Jack Gurr, Philip Goodrum, also part of that. They would not be part of that homegrown conversation because they came into the team out of college. They could be signed to the supplemental spots, though. Just depends on age and money and those kinds of things. Modiflow says, imagine that. Practically everyone has just tested positive from that squad. Good times. So why are these guys mixing in with their clubs when they go back to them? Bocanegra, obviously, no updates on Atlanta United's coaching search. He's not going to tell you anything. He's not going to give that away. No. Carlos has been well-trained.
To the question that Bart posed about Heinze being a dish on a Thanksgiving table, Tafka says that Heinze is my stuffing/dressing. He's the logical choice, but one where, depending on who made it, quality and taste is not entirely predictable.
This is the thing. Hold on. This is the thing. Hold on. The logical choice. That's the part where I'm still. Why? Explain why. Because there's a lot of managers who are out of work right now that. Why are they not the logical choice? That's what I'm asking people to analyze for themselves, and you want to share it, cool, but think about it. Why is he the obvious choice? That's what I don't think there is an obvious choice. I don't think there's one obvious choice. Sorry, go back to what Tafka was saying about Tata.
Tata was grandma's mac and cheese, guaranteed. There is no worry. It's the house favorite.
That's not true. Tafka, you got to go back in time. That is not true. That is not how people thought about the Tata Martino hire. There were a lot of questions. There were a whole lot of questions. That was not seen as a slam dunk hire. The questions about international managers, they don't understand the league. They don't have success in the league. The questions about he didn't win the big game with Argentina. He didn't win a trophy with Barcelona. There were questions. He ended up being that, and maybe at the very end. But no, there were questions. There were lots of questions. That's part of the gig. That's what's going to happen. Stephen Glass will coach Atlanta United in the CONCACAF Champions League with the same staff. Again, no real shock. You don't have a coach in place. You're not going to make a change to that. You're going to continue on with what you did at the end of the season. That's from Mike's Twitter again. No surprise there. I figured that would be the case.
Trying to scan to see if I've missed anything on our Twitter this morning. Going back into... no, okay, we are officially caught up on Twitter. We've caught up on everything from this morning dealing with today. I was going to volunteer something if you wanted me to talk about it.
Well, no, we still got news here. Kind of important stuff. There's a media availability going on. Sydney Hunt follows up on a little bit more about what Carlos Bocanegra said about Jeff Larentowicz, and this is paraphrased. Can't say enough about what he's meant to the club and the city. When the time comes, the club looks forward to bringing him back to Mercedes-Benz Stadium to show their appreciation. That's very cool. He will have a big day for sure. So I'll be excited for that. I hate to see his time in Atlanta end. I think he showed you from day one to decision day how just impactful a good number 6 can be in this league and in any team. I think he was just pure class throughout. Always a good guy, always had time for people. Complete and total leader with the group. And I hate to see that time end. We knew it was getting close. Didn't know if he had one more year in him. He had fooled us before where we thought it was time and he was done, and he wasn't. Now, this year was the same. He had a run of games where he was very important to this team and played very, very well. And ultimately couldn't sustain that. So we'll see what happens next for Jeff Larentowicz. Is that it for him in his career, or is he going to give it a go one more time? I think he's still got a little to give. I just don't know how much, and I don't know where that might be the right fit. Monoflow says, wait, we don't have anyone in his position anymore, do we? Well, Mo Adams played it. Mo Adams played it really, really well at the end of the season. Yeah. But I still think that's a position that you got to make a decision on long term. And could that mean that's a position you go out to the market for? Yeah, I think that's a fairly safe bet. Okay. Abby says maybe if the year had been normal, he may have announced his retirement. This sucks that he has. He may have his last year with another club. We'll see. We'll see if he does. We'll see what that means. I'm getting weird comments from things. I don't think there's any negative about what's going on with what it is for Jeff. I mean, this is just how things go. The club just posted a video. Class is forever. Thank you for everything, Jeff Larentowicz. It's awesome. That's very cool to see. It is not. Yep. There's no negative about that. I don't even understand how that could be seen that way. Modaflow says about Adams, and I agree. Adams seems to hunt more than sit in that 6 role. He does.
Yeah.
Going back to the rumor about Gabriel Heinze, he would fit that kind of system because of the way that midfield plays in a Gabriel Heinze system. So, maybe. I don't know. He was really good at the end of the season. The positional security, I guess, is the word that I'll use, because he does like to go hunt. He does cover a ton of ground. That is worrisome at times with Adams. But I did really like the Adams and Hosetu pairing. They complemented one another really, really well. We'll see. Go ahead.
No, Michael Hedges says that he hates that Jeff is moving on. Does that mean the only starters left from the 18 champions are only Joseph and Brad?
Escobar. Remedi is still there. Yeah, Miles hadn't worked into a starter yet. I think that's it. But I mean, that happens. You're going into year 3 off of that. That's kind of how it goes. It's pretty typical. Let's see. Byrne talking about Tata Martino taking a step away from the Atlanta United time. Best coach with the media in any country, any sport. Also a fantastic coach, which helps. The Mexican soccer media likes and respects him, which he says, I know that could change. That could change fast because the Mexican soccer media is pretty wild. He says, imagine if he wins that 5th game, El Quinto Partido. He'll be a god in Mexico. He absolutely will. If he gets them to a World Cup quarterfinal, forget it. Statues for Tata in Mexico. I mean, it will be that kind of adulation for sure if he can pull that off. Lots of great comments about Jeff Larenowitz's time in Atlanta, just scrolling through Twitter. It'll be a very cool day, and I hope it's a packed Mercedes-Benz Stadium when the team gets to honor him in the right way. That will be great. Maybe this year would have been different. Maybe he would have announced his retirement if you had done it this year, if things had worked out, if you could have had a full stadium. I don't know. There's no telling. I don't know if he knows what he wants to do yet, to be perfectly honest, because he didn't sound like he was giving lip service to it on decision day. It sounded like he really had not thought about it. He had not had it front of mind. He was focused on trying to get the team into the playoffs, and he would make a decision afterwards. It's going to be down to something that Michael Parkhurst talked about, how he felt after 18 going into 19. He was like, man, it's hard to get going again.
Yeah.
And it's going to be for Jeff, does he want to do that again? Does he want to try to make that run again and get fit and have to deal with all that? Or does he want to stop playing? That's going to be the question. And I don't think he's thought that through just yet.
Yeah, Tofka thinks that Jeff would have to get a too-good-to-be-true deal. Otherwise, it seems odd for Larry to move his family for likely just 1 year. Tofka thinks a retirement announcement's coming.
It's all speculation, Tofka. I mean, it could not. His family's from California, so, yeah. I mean, if he goes to California, then that's a whole different conversation entirely. Who knows? I honestly don't think he's considered it. I don't think he's thought about it. I don't think he's made those decisions yet because I think he was focused on the season here. And now we'll see what happens. I'm glad it didn't linger on. I'm really glad it hasn't lingered on, and it's not going to be a distraction from everything else going on. I'm glad that this is a way to. I mean, he deserves every bit of tribute you can give him. He deserves that video. He deserves everything. He deserves presentation when he's back at Mercedes-Benz for the first time, whether it's just to honor him or whether he's playing for somebody else. He deserves everything this club can give him. This club is not what it is, and he doesn't have the success that it's had without Michael Parkhurst making the decision to come here and without Jeff Larenowitz making the decision to come here. Those two were the bedrocks at the beginning. They legitimized it within MLS. I mean, you can talk about Miguel Almiron, you can talk about Joseph Martinez, you can talk about Tito Villalba. What legitimized Atlanta United in MLS circles was two veterans like Parkhurst and Larenowitz coming here, bringing their families here, and buying in day one. And Jeff was never the, I guess, official captain on a regular basis. Probably would have been this year if he had played consistently, but he was a leader in the team throughout. I mean, he was vital. So those two guys were really, really important. And we've talked about leadership this season. We've talked about how important it is. Now this is another one that, this is going to be something that the on-the-field replacement is important. The intangible replacement is very, very important with leadership. And, Jeff's going to be tough to replace.
Joe Boss says, I'm so appreciative for the Five Stripes to have had Big Red in this team. They don't win trophies without him. They'll miss his leadership and professionalism.
Carlos Bocanegra asked about if fans should be concerned that a coach has not yet been hired. Okay. Quote, we don't talk about rumors. We keep our stuff in-house. Hopefully we can have something by the end of the year. But if not, I wouldn't get too concerned. They will have a coach. They're working to get a coach. Just because you don't hear about it means that people aren't hearing about it. I don't understand why that is even an issue. You don't want your team putting their public or their business that they are doing behind the scenes, because when you're talking to people, when you're interviewing people, when you're negotiating with people, you don't want that stuff public. In general, are there times where teams have leaked stuff to try to make things happen? Yes. Atlanta United doesn't do that.
Yeah.
People aren't finding out. That's not on the team. That doesn't even make any sense. You don't want, if you're talking to three different people, Coach A, B, and C, and you're considering Coach A, B, and C, you don't want Coach B to hear about what you're talking about with Coach A, and you don't want to hear Coach C then come back with an increased offer because, well, I heard that Coach B was getting offered this. You don't want any of that. You want it to be private. That's why you do things the way you do. So, look, narratives all day. Create them. Go. Have fun. But the front office keeping things in-house is a good thing, not a bad thing. And it's down to reporters to go find it.
Yep.
That's the job. Because, look, I mean, if DC United, if they are giving Stephen Goff all of that information, if they're just saying, yeah, here's who we're talking to, here's who we've interviewed, here's what we're doing, then I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why they would do that. There's no benefit to them to do it. But imagine Stephen Goff knows a lot of people, and he's well-connected, and he's getting that information because he's reporting. He's grinding.
Mm-hmm.
Good on him. And it makes DC United have to be, man, how do you find that one out? Okay, we got to go meet somebody somewhere else. He's tapped in everywhere.
Yeah.
Because they don't want that stuff out there. I don't know. I don't even know why this is still an issue, but I get it. People get antsy. It's fine. Domer says the front office playing close to the vest is making all the drama that is creating clicks and articles, and that's absolutely true. It's good. Also makes us amped up. All that's fine. The part that I don't like about it, and then I get very frustrated about it, is the insinuation that people aren't doing their jobs because you don't hear rumors. No, that means they are doing their jobs.
Yeah, they're doing their job to the other end of the spectrum by not having all of this information come out about any candidate A, B, C, D, or E. I mean, Stephen Goff with his information, Kevin Baxter with his information. You know, they're grinding, they're getting that information out. The close to the vest, what you're seeing from the front office with Atlanta United means to the extreme that they are doing their job. They're doing their search the way that they want to do their search, and the information isn't coming out. It doesn't mean that they're not doing anything about it.
Carlos Bocanegra, according to Joe Patrick, and Doug Robertson had it too. Joe Patrick has a quote, so I'm going to go with Joe's. Says the team, quote, hopes to have some news, unquote, about Jackson Conway soon. Well, there you go. Not a surprise. Conway's development has been a lot of fun to watch. That's why I love calling the twos games, to watch a kid like Jackson Conway play as an academy player in 2018, take the step to sign a pro deal early, treated like a homegrown, even though he wasn't a homegrown player in MLS circles, but he was a pro with Atlanta United too. Put in the work in 2019. Goals weren't coming as fast for him, but he was putting in the work and becoming a better player day in, day out. 2020, he had injuries to deal with. He was coming off of an injury in preseason. He had, I think, some flare-ups with a foot. That's something you need to get sorted out. But once he did, he scored in almost every game he played. And he didn't just score run-of-the-mill tap-ins. He was scoring some golazos. Mm-hmm. Kid's got a special ability in the final third. And he's got that mix of size, of good feet, of passing ability, of awareness, and he can finish. keep an eye on Jackson Conway. He grew a lot from 14 or so when he joined the academy, played in day one at Pace Academy with the U15s. He was not short, but he was not a big kid. And now he's a big boy.
Yeah.
So your body has to fill out. You have to adjust. You might have some little minor injuries along the way. We saw it with George Bello, too. Conway's a talent. Conway's an absolute talent. And if he gets that homegrown deal, I'll be very excited to see it.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it with Miles Robinson, seen it with George Campbell, seeing it with Jackson Conway. And, I mean, that's why we like to call these games, so we can see the development and you see the progression and see all the growth of these guys as they start from academy to the twos and getting their opportunities with Atlanta United. And Jackson Conway's next on the list, hopefully.
Badger also making a joke, and this happened one time. Jackson Conway would also give you the shirt off his back.
Yes,
one time.
There you go.
One time, he's a kid. It happens. He was excited. Let it go. Let the kid breathe. He'll be okay. Scored a pretty good goal there. He probably was excited. Sean says, could Jackson be the backup to Joseph? Maybe not year one, because you're going to have Adam John under contract, and you're going to have Eric Lopez under contract, who can play up top as well as out wide, I think. But, yeah, I think he can be that. And maybe more in the long run. Who knows? But he's young. Get him under contract, grow it. Burned with a good point. He wanted to show off the chest tattoo. I think he had just had some work done, so he was very excited to show it.
Yeah.
Jackson has the potential to be that, but he doesn't have to be that day one, Sean. And that's a good spot to be in, because you don't want to put a lot on a kid straight away. All right. We've got other stuff coming. Jarrett Smith, who follows the T's very closely as well. Conway jumped in 2020, and it was fun. He's gotten bigger, but I don't think he's just a physical monster. Solid as hell with the ball at his feet. He's gotten active as hell without the ball in the right ways. That's been the number one piece of development for him this year, is the work off the ball. Late in the year, it was interesting to see Goodrum become the number 9 centrally and Conway drift out wide and find ways to hurt you there, which was very cool to see. He's ready. I think he's ready for the jump, and it sounds like he's going to get it. So stay tuned on that. I want to see if we get anything else that comes up. Press conference just concluded. Looks like, and this is from Joe Patrick's piece that just posted over at Dirty South Soccer. It might be speculation. He wrote a piece about Atlanta United 2 and the end-of-season player reviews, talked to Tony Annan. Joe connecting dots, obviously the Conway news, but it sounds like Ben Lundgaard is a player who the club wants to continue to push and could be in line for an MLS deal. Not a shock. He was on an MLS deal in Columbus. And I thought that was the intent when he was signed last year. We talked about it here.
Yeah.
Was you were getting a guy who was like Brad in that he's a big guy. He's bigger than Brad. He is very vocal in goal, and honestly, that's something I didn't hear enough at times with the twos when it restarted, and it was madness restarting, so everybody gets a pass on that. But Lundgaard is big. He's quick. I liked his distribution a good bit. He's young for a goalkeeper. So if he becomes the number 3, that makes a lot of sense. And again, you're keeping your pipeline together because you have Vicente Reyes, who's in the academy, Chilean Youth International. You have Justin Garces, and you potentially have this player coming on loan, Novo, from Lanús. Now, that was reported around the time of the Moreno deal. It was reported to happen in 21. It was reported. Let's wait and see if it actually happens. Question about James Brighton, and Jarrett brought him up because Jarrett is the number 1 James Brighton fan in Atlanta. He is still at Clemson. I have my yard being done, Abby, or I think my neighbors do, actually. Sorry, there's not much I can do about it at the moment. Brighton is at Clemson. Brighton had a knee injury that he's overcome, scored a big goal in the ACC final. I think he's got one more year at Clemson. Give him another year to get back completely from the knee injury, and we'll see where James Brighton is. We'll see where Charlie Asensio is, too. as a potential left back option, or maybe holding midfield. Machok Chol is a senior, so he's graduating this year. So if you want to sign him to a homegrown deal, you got to do it before the draft. I think that's it. I think that's it on that stuff. Let's see if
a couple of other things here on Twitter real quick.
Go ahead.
Rich Ransom, we were discussing front offices keeping business in-house.
Mm-hmm.
Rich says, back in 2017, there was talk of a deal between the Union and Dynamo for Cubo Torres. But then Union director Ernie Stewart canceled it because rumors of the deal came out. Ernie said, we lose the trust of those we're doing deals with if rumors about them come out, end quote.
Yeah.
And so that...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You've got to keep your business behind the scenes.
Yes.
You just got to keep your business behind the scenes. Byrne says it's good to have a domestic number 9. They're hard to find. I totally agree. I think Conway can be that. Says I don't see Conway going to Europe. Actually, I might disagree with that. He was born in Leeds.
Yeah.
So he has the ability to go, and he wouldn't have to get a work permit or anything. So, yeah, he could. And there was talk. I know he spent some time at Wolves in their academy. They had done some stuff over here in this area as well. So there were people in England who were aware of him. I don't know, what kind of offers he would get. I don't know what that would look like. But, yeah, he would have some abilities to go that maybe others wouldn't. He's best served here. He's best served here in an area where he can continue to develop. You're not asking him to score 20 goals next year. You want him to continue to grow as a player and be a vital piece. And it's a good fit. And depending on what the schedule looks like next year, you might have a lot of opportunities to play with different things. I mean, Joseph could be away at Copa America with Venezuela. He could have some opportunities to play. He could. DNJMS, what's up? I believe that is Dan James. How you doing? I'm coming in late, but thoughts on Austin taking a look at Jeff? He's a veteran, has expansion experience. He could be more valuable to them than Atlanta. Yeah, he could. They are really not behind. It's not fair to say in 2020, but they've got 2 guys under contract. They're going to add 5 in the expansion draft. I think they'll be busy in the waiver and reentry stuff as well. Very curious to see what they do. Do they decide that having Jeff Larentowicz as a 15, 20 games a year guy next year to help solidify probably a young group? Yeah, they could. They could. That's not a crazy shout. Be curious to see what they might offer. They will have a good bit of allocation money to work with, so if they wanted to sign him and then buy him down to where it doesn't have a big cap effect, they could do that too. That's an interesting shout. Keep an eye on that one. It's the only thing I would say about it is, he doesn't have family ties to Austin, Texas. Yeah. Does he want to go back to California? Does he want to settle somewhere else? I mean, like we saw with Michael Parkhurst, Parky told us that his wife said, all right, this is where I want to be. Like, we're picking Columbus. This is where we're going to go. They spent time in Columbus, obviously, on the field, and she got to make that call. And that's where they are settling after, his playing career ended. Don't know what that means for Jeff. So we'll see. But I think, as everybody is saying, Jeff Larentowicz was so vital to this team. And if he plays next year, he will be important even if he doesn't play a lot for whoever signs him. And there's teams that could use a player like him. Austin, obviously, building from scratch. They could be. I don't think he's got more than a year in him, and I don't think he's got a ton of games and minutes in him. But could he be helpful for a team in year one? He absolutely could.
Y'all means all at Mad Dog 31 wonders about Jeff as a coach.
Could be. I mean, he just doesn't have any experience yet. So I believe his dad was a coach. So, he's got that kind of in his veins. Would not shock me to see him as a coach. One of the most aware players of the big picture that I've talked to. He's got a coach's mentality. So, yeah, I could absolutely see him coaching. It just depends on if and when he wants to do it. We talked about that with Gabriel Heinze when he retired. He didn't want to coach at first. He wanted no part of it. He wanted to get away from it. Michael Parker said the same thing. Other guys, like, they stop playing and they want to immediately stay involved. Questions about Javier Mascherano and what he does. Fernando Gago sounds like he's going to become one of Heinze's assistants wherever he goes next. He just retired. Everybody's got a different mentality. Jeff's got a family. He might elect to take some time off. He might take some time off and get his coaching badges while he's at it. He might work with kids, while he's first starting out. So many different routes. It's no rush. But if you told me that Jeff Larentowicz managed in Major League Soccer in the next 20 years, I would not bet against it.
A couple of other things that have popped up from the press conference from Sidney Hunt. Carlos said that 8 or 9 academy players will be training with the first team leading up to CONCACAF Champions League as well.
Yeah, and they had talked about that before. It's not anybody under contract that they have to talk about. Those players would have to be signed to a deal either with Atlanta United 2 or homegrown deals to play in the CONCACAF match. But it creates an opportunity to see those guys against first-team kind of talent and to evaluate for what's next in 2021 and what's next for those players maybe even quicker. But, yeah, they'll get an opportunity to test themselves, and it'll be a good evaluation period. That's why this game, it's important. It's a big deal. It can be a very vital piece for the club going forward and preparing for 21.
And then Daniel Price coming in. We've talked about Lawrence Weick for the most part, but the Weick move surprised Daniel Price in the year-end roster moves.
I don't really think it does because he takes up an international slot, and he's not going to start next year. International slots, you have 8 of them. You can always figure those things out if you have to. You'd like to not. And you want those to be players who are factoring in for bigger minutes than I would see Weick for next year. Weick played this year because he had to. And I think he did fine. I think people were overly harsh on him in Orlando. He was in a tough spot. He had to move around. He made some mistakes. He also had some good plays as well. I thought he had a good first half. He looked like his confidence was shot after the goal, and his play dipped. Weick showed other potential employers that he can play at this level. Again, I don't think he's a starter at MLS, but can he be a rotation guy in MLS? Can he be a utility guy? Yes. Can he be a starter and play every minute in the USL Championship? Yes. He's a good player, a good squad player in MLS, and a good starter at the second division level. But here you're looking for a little bit more out of a player who's going to be an international slot. And if you have that decision to make, I get it.
And that officially catches us up on Twitter, looking at juice boxes again for tonight real quick. No real movement except Philadelphia closer to even money, plus 100.
Other games today, we're not going to run through juice boxes on them, but just for your viewing pleasure, you've got Champions League, 2 games at 12:55. Chelsea plays Rennes. Sevilla goes to Krasnodar. Neither one is all that thrilling. Your games at 3 o'clock, Barcelona without Messi in the Ukraine to play Dynamo Kiev. Manchester United hosting Başakşehir. PSG hosting Leipzig is maybe the most interesting game of the day. Copa Libertadores, if you are interested in any way in the Gabriel Heinze rumors, you will want to watch Racing hosting Flamengo because Racing could be in play for Gabriel Heinze if they don't get through this. They could be in play anyway, but they could definitely be in play if Racing doesn't play well at home against Flamengo in the home leg. That's at 7:30. Atletico Paranaense is hosting River Plate at 5:15. Liga de Quito is hosting Santos. Those are on the BN Family Networks. You can watch it on Fanatis. MLS playoffs start at 6. Toronto and Nashville, 8. Philadelphia, New England, 10:30. Seattle and LAFC. I'm sure we're going to have plenty to talk about tomorrow. From these games, from 3 MLS playoff games, from anything else on the news and rumor front. We'll have plenty of things to get into in the morning. 9 a.m., we'll be back well past Wednesday. Go ahead and start thinking about your questions. Anything pops up during the day, make sure you're following us. OSG Nelson, Soccer Down Here. I'm at Longshoe. We'll be sharing stuff as we see it. We'll keep you posted on anything that breaks. We'll be watching the MLS games tonight. I'm sure I'll be tweeting about it, going nuts, hopefully going nuts. I hope they're entertaining. I think they will ramp up in entertainment value.
Yes.
Is kind of where I'm thinking. I think they will be dramatic and then more entertaining and then very entertaining for the last game. So Thanks for hanging out with us for 2 hours and 41 minutes. We don't do 3-hour shows around here, so we're not going to do one. We'll be back tomorrow. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.